I'm not going to do the usual introduction there because we're just waiting to make sure everyone can get on first of all before we start the official beginning.
Yeah, it looks very much YouTube.
I've got all the people in the chat box up, so that suggests to me that it's working.
Is it working? We've got I can see Charlie's there, but we've got 0 viewers again, which worries me. Oh, on air? No, he says it's on air. Now we've got 3.
I just logged in,
and it's okay.
I can see that it says live, but it's that.
But if you refresh it, it should work.
Tap on it.
Oh yeah, but remember when I refreshed it before and it
not you, Claire.
Claire.
Yeah, not you. You leave it alone.
This is so professional.
Yeah, we're on.
We're on now.
We're on. You can do your intro.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, hang on.
Right, maybe do the video. You didn't see that. Quick minute black thing.
Right, we're doing the video again. Oh, I nearly clicked on your one, Ben. Bear with. Hello, and welcome, we believe, as far as we know, to episode 88 of the SheGulls podcast, powered by Albion Obsessed, the one and only podcast dedicated to Brighton Hove Albion women's football team. I'm your host, Duncan. As always, I'm joined today by fellow Albion fans, Ben. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Duncan, and for definitely the first time this evening.
It definitely is the first time this evening. Yeah. We're anticipating teething problems, but we'll find out, won't we? We'll find out as we go along. Of course, as always, we're also joined by Claire. Hello, Claire.
Hello.
And by the returning Abby. Hooray! Yay. Abby's back. Yay!
Hello.
The awesome foursome have reunited to bring you this incredible podcast. As always, we are powered by Albion Obsessed. We still miss our friend Joe. Joe, if you're watching, listening, or you see this, big shout out to him and the Albion Obsessed crew. But yes, it's still me pressing all the right buttons in all the wrong places. Or in fact, I think Ben said all the wrong buttons in all the wrong places at one point. So
eventually, by process of elimination, you might press a right one in the right place one of these days.
Exactly, law of statistics. By just randomly clicking buttons, I will eventually land on the right one. You would think, at least, anyway. So before we start in earnest, as we're going to be sort of discussing our annual survey, our SheGulls Survey 2026, but I thought I'd start. We don't normally do this, but I thought I'd go round the room, as it were, and find out what you guys have been doing in the absence of football. So I'll start with Claire.
With me?
Yes.
Well, I had a lovely week away in France, so I thought I'd take myself off and visit my friend over there. And it's kind of a working, hanging out week, really. We do it quite often where we just get some work done, but we catch up and stuff. So yeah, I had a nice week there in the sunshine, which is why I'm a little bit red, because we did actually have sunshine. So yeah, it's quite nice.
Did you pack sunscreen or
I always have a daily SPF moisturizer, so thankfully I was covered, but I still caught the sun. It was quite it was quite nice. We had a kind of a day at the beach and sat out like proper tourists outside a pub and had a burger and a beer, and as I was not driving all week, I could have as many beers as I wanted. I did rain. They're very good. They have a thing called Desperado over there, which we do get here.
Yeah, I've had it.
We tend to get the sort of original version. They have loads of different flavors, and they are unbelievable. So good job I don't live out there.
Yeah, the one we get, I think, is just it's beer with tequila.
Yeah, they've all got tequila or rum in them or something like that. But over there, they literally have different flavors. So you've got like mojito flavored, or you've got just like berry flavored, or lime flavored, or my favorite, tropical.
There you go. Tropical. I'm going to make a note of this just in case.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. If anyone knows where you can get them over here.
Yeah, I think I must have had it about 30 years ago.
Well, it's lovely.
No.
Yes. Well, And you've sounds like you've basically completely avoided the football for the most part. So
well, yeah, I mean, we couldn't watch it over there. We tried to watch the England games, but we couldn't get it on their TV. So yeah, no football whatsoever, really. It's quite nice. Nice to have a little break from it, I suppose. If you're not able to go and watch it, then might as well just turn it all off.
Yeah, absence makes the heart grow fonder, as they say.
Absolutely.
Abby, how about yourself over the last week or so? Sans WSL action.
Well, there's plenty of excitement down at Priory Lane Freespawn Borough, which is my other football team, and they've got another new manager. So that's the fourth of the season. Interims. So
is there a record for how many managers you can have in one season?
It must be. And the next guy is quite an interesting figure, shall we say. It's sort of dividing the fan base whether people actually want him or not. So it's going to be
not Sam Allardyce, is it?
No. It's going to be entertaining, if nothing else. But no, my good lady is taking advantage of the fact that I am at home, and has requested a renovation of the conservatory / utility room. So we're sort of building shelves and goodness knows what. And we spent a day in IKEA looking at things, which unfortunately gave her a lot of ideas. One of which was, if we knock this wall out here and rebuild that wall there, we could buy this sofa.
I think the IKEA air was getting to her at that point, perhaps.
Yes. I swiftly moved her on to get some meatballs and chips, and then and we left very quickly.
You swerved the marketplace very quickly at the end.
Oh, well, we got into marketplace, and I just picked up a little basket and went, "That'll do us," and she went, "Oh, don't be silly," and picked up a big trolley. I was like, "Oh, heck."
That's when you know something large is being purchased.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly.
But yes. So football coming back will probably be cheaper.
There you go. And Ben, how about yourself? I suspect, given that you specialise in being our sort of correspondent on football worldwide. I know we've got Charlie in the comments as well, and he keeps a keen eye on the international games. So I should suspect you've been watching a fair bit of football.
In the break from the football, I've been watching a bit of football. I mean, the cycling season started again as well, which some of the best races of the season coming up. So that's the Strade Bianche race was at the weekend, which is my friend went actually, and I'm very jealous. It goes over the white roads of Tuscany, finishes in the middle of Siena. It's beautiful. I mean, there's just been a lot of football. I kind of watched the Lionesses games, but my daughter wasn't in that nativity play, so I wasn't really that bothered. But I didn't see any of the She Believes, which Colombia were playing in, but I've watched loads of the Asian Cup stuff. And there's been some really nice stuff as well, because so often, I often moan about it, don't I? There's one team that's good and one team that tries to stop them. So you get teams parking the bus and 57 players behind the ball, that kind of thing. I watched a game the other day. I've completely forgotten who it was now. But both teams were just at it, hammer and tongs. It was fantastic. One of the best games of football I've watched for ages. I mean, it wasn't the best quality, but it was just such entertainment because nobody was sort of, neither of them were sort of playing anything at all negative. It was Vietnam. Actually, it was Vietnam-India. That was it. It was fantastic. Really, really good fun. But yeah, obviously, Charlie's been out there, and obviously Kiko and Moeka have been out there. We're going to go over the internationals in a bit more detail next week, aren't we? But
yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think it would be. We normally talk about the internationals, kind of, who's played and who's scored. But I thought, given next week it will still be prior to the Chelsea game, so we'll just have that to preview. It might be nice to actually talk about sort of how they're actually doing. So having seen a 2 or 3, well, in most cases, the European teams, it probably would have been a couple of appearances for the likes of Yele and Caitlin. But with the Asian Cup, it might be 3-4 games, and we'll know a little bit more about who's playing who. And so, I thought it might be nice to kind of go a little bit more international flavour next week, and we can actually assess how they've actually done on the international break.
I suppose briefly that Australia have had their 3 group games, and Charlie played in the second one against Iran.
Yeah,
against Iran, wasn't it? Yeah, she managed to get booked actually, but that wasn't her fault. I think she was basically played into trouble by somebody and didn't have anywhere to go with it. But otherwise was absolutely exemplary, to the point where I thought, could Charlie play number 6? Yeah, but then obviously, she's getting so much time on the ball that it was, and then actually, so they finished second in the group because they drew 3-3 with South Korea. So they will be playing. This will be before we record. So they'll be playing North Korea in the next round in the quarterfinal. But they could
traditionally
in the final.
reasonably good, but I don't think this team is one of their better ones of the past. They lost, I think, didn't they, with their last game to somebody, I feel like.
No, it was 3-3, really absolutely last minute equaliser from Alan Kennedy, who just, I'd never seen
North
them play
Korea,
this well.
though.
Oh, North
Korea,
yeah.
I think they lost
China.
2-1. China, that's it. Yeah, I knew someone beat them, and I think it's weird that if anyone is a fan of like documentaries and stuff, HITC7's got a really good video about why the North Korean team, their youth teams at men's and women's levels, have been incredible, but why when they make it to the adult age groups they seem to fall off a cliff. Very good documentary. But
it's probably the professionalism, I should think.
I think it is that. Yeah, that's a big part of it.
You get to that point, and then you're supposed to sort of move on as you become a full-time professional footballer.
When actually you just end up playing in the North Korean Premier League, which is, of mixed ability. I would have to guess that. So,
but Japan look like they're going to win their group. And if they do, I think they will get either. It looks like the Philippines or Uzbekistan, I think. In the next round, but they're absolutely romping. They put 11 past India the other day, which was kind of quite cruel in a way. But Kiko got 2 of them, and what was really pleasing was that she took their penalty, and she took it very well, and that was like, ooh, hello.
So we could have a new PK taker.
Happy to see her take those. But I suppose they're both Australia and Japan look like they're marching on. So we'll come back next week and work out if they've got into the semi-final or not.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Yes, indeed. So we'll come on to the topic at hand. So just in case anyone isn't familiar, for the last including this year, it'll be 3 years we've done a SheGulls survey. Just put the word out on social media, all the platforms and everything. Just asking people for their opinions, essentially all to do with the club. Some of it is also information for us, so we can find out things like who watches the podcast, who listens to it, things like that. We probably won't cover so much, but as it sort of pertains to the football team, it's quite useful to kind of have a look through the data, see what you can glean from it, and then use that as a jumping off point to kind of see what the trends are, how are people thinking, etc. So thank you to everyone who completed the survey. We had, I think, over 50 again. So in every year we've had over 50 respondents. I think in an ideal world we'd want a lot more, but obviously at this stage, we are going to be kind of catering to our sort of core crowd of people. So maybe in the future with a bit of club support and stuff, we can get it out to more people. But for the time being, it's quite useful to know at least, from our perspective and the people that we interact with, what their thoughts are on the team and sort of, how they think things are going and how they think things will progress, etc. So just bear with me while I bring the little tab up with my results. So here we go. So what I'll do is I'll kind of go through some of the results, and if I'll stop if there's sort of something in particular I think is worth discussing. So hopefully that will make sense. I'm sure we'll muddle through it somehow. But the first question, I don't know how many questions there are, so bear with me. But the first question is, how long have you been a fan of Brighton Hove Albion women? And for the second year in a row, the most popular is 2 to 5 years with 60%. And then we've got 5 to 10 years comes in second, 27.5. And actually the smallest category, and this might be something related to, you know, who we're sort of speaking to, who we're asking to complete the survey, but by far the smallest wedge is 0 to 1 years. So I'll throw this one. We probably don't need to go to everyone for every question, but maybe I'll ask Abby about this one. Why do you think that would be the smallest sort of section of the wheel, as it were? 2 to 5 years seems very popular, which I think, you know, you could put down to Euros. But would you say that the smaller amount of people in the last sort of year or so is kind of, would you say that's on the club? Would you say it's a bit of a downturn in women's football fandom? What would make you think that there's a kind of slowing down slightly of new fans into the club?
I mean, slowing down of new fans into the club, probably look at LCL, look at the London clubs who are all pumping money in. And, you know, we've all said the game day experience at LCL was really, really very good. And so on. It may well be that, you know, the 12 midday kickoffs and all that malarkey is upsetting people. But equally, it might just be one of those skews of statistics that those of us who have been following the team for 2 to 5 years are therefore slightly more invested and more likely to fill in the survey.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's definitely an argument for that, for sure. Yeah,
and probably all the people that were at 2 years, 3 years ago are still within that bracket, and they might move up next year. But equally, I think if you are a new fan, so off the back of the Euros, everyone expects that the Euros will be this homogenous, every team is going to be lifted up. Well, no, it's going to be every team that's got a lioness in it. You know, if you've watched the Euros and you've gone, I love that team, X was my favourite player, where can I watch her? Then they're not going to go much further than outside the M25, unless they, you know, are in the vicinity of, or they want to go to Manchester. But that's where the Lionesses are from. They're from Manchester and London. So that's where the fans are going to go. And it's also just perpetuated, like with all these club and extra competitions that are coming up. You know, Manchester United did one of them and Arsenal did the other. So they're not doing anything to grow the women's game. They're doing things to grow those clubs. The big clubs are just going to get bigger. So I think, you know, potentially there's probably things that the club could be doing to get more people in. Yes, we probably want the people who are coming in to be a lot more invested and therefore getting involved in stuff like this and getting involved with the SheGulls. But equally, I think it is just the way that the game is that new fans just go to where the Lionesses. All the time that the Lionesses are successful, that is going to be a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd completely agree with that. I think there is a sort of a bit of an uptick, I would say, in people or in the 5 to 10 years bracket. So that would, again, sort of be in line with you suggesting that people who have been a fan for a couple of years since Euro 2022 would probably be in the same bracket. But equally, if you'd got into it maybe from the previous World Cup, you'd now be in that upper bracket. So I think that's good, because it doesn't feel like we're losing fans as we go along the line. It just feels like maybe there's a slight slowdown of the new ones coming in. But obviously, like I say, you know, we can't survey everyone, as we would love to do, but it's just to give us a guide. So to the next one, some of the things that you picked up on are going to also come up later on as well. So we will get everyone's thoughts on all these topics. So not a problem there. Primary reason for supporting the club. This is again similar to last year, which is actually supporting the women's game is the number one reason for coming and supporting Brighton. I think, and maybe I'll ask Claire about this one. I think coming into women's football, however long it was ago now, 4 or 5 years ago properly, but even a few years before that, sort of more casually, I would have thought that the main reason, or this is how I would have thought, the main reason would be because you already supported that club's men's team.
Yeah.
But actually, this is, I think, actually 3 years in a row, but certainly I know 2 years in a row, the biggest has been supporting the women's game. So why do you think that is, Claire?
I think there's several reasons. I think one, a lot of women have never engaged in men's football and they have no interest in it. It's not for them. So they don't care whether there's a local men's Brighton team. That's not who they're ever going to watch. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that they might enjoy the men's game, but they don't enjoy the men's game experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas they do with the women, because it's a lot different, isn't it? And I think the women's game is obviously more accessible. So if you do support a Premier League team, which Brighton are, a lot of the times trying to get tickets on a casual basis isn't optional for some of the games that you want to watch, whereas you can get them, just walk up to the club gate on a Saturday, on Sunday with the women's game. You can just walk straight in. So and season tickets are cheaper. Everything is cheaper. Everything's easier. If you've got a family of 4 of you, and you all want to go at the weekend and watch football, well, you're going to go to the women's game because that's affordable. So I don't think there's much crossover between the men's and the women's game as people think. I think that, yes, that's happening at Arsenal, but Arsenal's a very specific kind of club that has been working for decades to create that. And I think, again, like Abby said, because they've got the Lionesses, it's been a lot easier to boost it. I don't think it will ever happen at Brighton. I don't think that people watching Brighton women are bothered about Brighton men on the whole. There'll be a few, obviously, but I think most of us aren't. And I don't really see that as changing in the women's game. I think the women's game is enjoyed by a different set of supporters. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's about 25% that is showing for loyalty, so affiliation to the club. So I think from that perspective, that seems about right to me. I think now, knowing what we do, as it were, and then the other one, which I think is also worth mentioning, is proximity. So being local to the actual action.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing that we've gone down to 0 people again.
It's gone very quiet.
Why is it doing that?
I don't know. It might just be
because now it says live and recording, and it only says 26 seconds.
Very weird. Let me have a little look. See.
No, it's still going.
Still going on.
Still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's weird. Just keep an eye on it, just in case we're behind, and then it does suddenly cut out or whatever it is. But I'll obviously cut this out of the main bit. Very strange. Right. Yeah. See if Charlie pops up with anything as well. I'm still here. Oh, I don't know what's going on. As long as you're still here,
it may well just be something that YouTube are fiddling with and have mucked it up or something.
Yeah, could be. Those devious people over at YouTube. Anyway, On with the show. I think again you sum that up perfectly, Claire. I think that's exactly it. Is there isn't the need to kind of be affiliated to a particular club, or I mean perhaps people who actually specifically live in Brighton might feel a little bit like that, but a lot of our fans don't, and a lot of Arsenal fans don't live in London, and so on and so forth.
I mean, I think like when you're supporting a smaller club, I think you probably do tend to support the team most local to you. So there's an element of loyalty in the sense of this is my hometown, which is exactly the same as why the men go and support their hometown team. But I don't think necessarily that the women's supporters give two tosses about what happens at the men's game. I
mean, there's a Venn diagram, but there's men there's people that fans of the men's team that don't care about the women's team. There are fans of the women's team that don't care about the men's team. But there is quite a sizable thing in the middle of the Venn diagram. Me, for instance.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that there isn't people.
No.
I know there is. Because, I know you guys, and I know there's several people that go to the away games. But I just think if we're going to grow women's football, we have to grow women's football and not keep trying to push it into this thing of we're growing because we're part of the men's team.
Yes, that I agree with. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there'll always be some crossover, and because ultimately, at the end of the day, I think this is probably quite a key point. We are both, the women and the men are playing the same game. Yeah. It's like some people will watch men's tennis because they like, I don't know, they used to like Nadal and Federer, etc., and they're not bothered about the women. But there'll also be some who really enjoy watching the women's tennis, not bothered about the men, and vice versa. There'll be some who will watch it because it's tennis.
I think a lot of it though is like if you go to Wimbledon to watch the tennis, whether you're watching the men's tennis or the women's tennis, it's the same experience as a fan.
Yeah.
And that's not how it is if you go to watch men's football and women's football. And that's where I think the big difference is. Women's football and men's football as a fan are very, very different.
Yes.
And some people will enjoy both or get something out of both. But most people would be watching one or the other because that's how they prefer to be a fan.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably why I think it was about the same 50%. It might even have been a little bit higher last year. But yeah, about half of our fans are basically saying they support the Brighton team mainly because they want to support the women's game. They want to watch women's football. For a lot of those people, it is probably proximity. That's how they end up at Brighton, but it's not because they're from Brighton or because they already supported the men's team. Yeah. It just happens to be they want to go and support the women's game, and that's where they can go and do so. So
yeah, I mean, no, for me, it was, I've always been a Liverpool supporter, but trying to get to Liverpool every week to watch a game was not going to happen. And I lived in Crawley, and after the Euros, I was like, where's the nearest women's team? I'll go and start watching that. And it wouldn't have mattered who they were. I would have just rocked up, and they happened to be playing at Crawley. It was Brighton. So that's who I went and watched.
Yeah. And I think that's where I think proximity is almost another kind of quarter of the wedge. And I think that's almost people, that might be people almost 50-50 between, I'm doing it to support the women's game, but they also happen to be my local club. So I think there might be a bit of crossover almost between those two sections as well. So we'll go on to the next one. This is quite a simple one, probably doesn't need much explanation, which is, are you a season ticket holder, yes or no? So it was basically 75-25, 75% season ticket holders, 25% not. So when we're going forward in this, just bear that in mind, you guys obviously, but everyone watching and everything, the majority of people who have answered this are season ticket holders. So, which is quite handy because there is a section on season tickets. I'm going to come to you on the next one, Ben, which is how many home games do you attend per season on average? And the top was 64.7%, which was 10 to 11. So basically missing maybe one or at least attempting to attend all of them. And actually, this is one I've got a note for on my little notepad. That went up from 44.6% last year to 64.7% this year.
That's good.
So that suggests to me that season ticket holders this year are a little bit more committed than season ticket holders before. So what's your sort of general thought on that volume of season ticket holders, Ben, basically wanting to get to every game or actually getting to every game?
Well, I mean, I suppose you buy a season ticket because you intend to, don't you? Generally, I think, because there was a thing, wasn't there, after the 22 Euros, where lots of people just bought season tickets, partly because they went to the first game, they went to a couple of games and then tailed off, but also partly because they wanted to support the team and stuff. So getting a season ticket was just giving them some money, whatever. I think on the pitch it's been very good. I think we've had a couple of unlucky results and stuff, but I think it's been a good product on the pitch generally, and that gets people back next week, doesn't it? I suppose the people that are buying season tickets now are the people that do, that will only miss it if they have to. I suppose. I mean, I've not missed a home game for a long time now. I've not been to many away games recently, which is something I need to address. But it would take a big deal for me to miss a home game, I think. So even though they keep putting them on at stupid times.
There will be a question on that. Don't worry about that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that seems like quite a sizable jump. So, or sometimes I think if it's negligible, you can argue, well, one or two people could have swayed it either way. But it does seem to me like that much of it. It's basically a 20% increase. It kind of is suggesting that those who do come and do invest in a season ticket are more likely at present to kind of stick with it and keep going to games and make sure they attend even the kind of the less glamorous games and stuff. I think it was almost there maybe a sense before, especially with the Euros and then the World Cup 22 and 23, that it would be when Arsenal come to town, all the season ticket holder rows were full, and then we play Bristol City or Palace or someone like that, and it would be much lower. So I think that's a really positive trend, and dare I say it, and this is not to do with SheGulls specifically, but just in general, the fact that there's more of a community feel, I think now is a part of that, is that you feel involved in something. There are resources, there are people you can talk to, there are there is supporters groups, there is a band, there is and I think that all that makes you want to go to the game, but also you want to see your friends, you want to see familiar faces, you want to do all that sort of thing. And I think that is, I think, at least a part of why some people are making the effort to go to every game rather than just picking and choosing so and so and so and so, because I mean, I can't. What was our last home game? Would it have been?
It would have been the Arsenal game, but that was postponed.
That was postponed, and then we had West Ham away the week.
Yeah, it was. Oh goodness,
I can't even remember.
Was it the cup game against Forest?
No, it was London City.
I was London City.
Oh, London City. Yeah. So I mean, my point being with that is, I kind of miss seeing you guys. Like, I get to see you guys on a Monday normally. I know we had last Monday off. Sorry, everyone. But yeah, I miss seeing you guys. So as much as I'm excited to go to the next game, I'm kind of also excited to see my friends and have a chat and see how everyone's doing. And so I think having that sort of community feel and those places that you can get involved with and all that sort of thing is hopefully encouraging people to keep coming week in, week out. So hopefully that continues. So we've got a few. I'll kind of probably go through a few of these, and we're on to current performance and expectations. And actually, a lot of these are kind of real mixed bags. So I'll kind of go through a few of them, and then maybe I'll come around to you guys and see see what you make of it. So how would you describe the team's performance this year? And it's basically poor, very poor, disappointing, unlucky, average, good, or excellent. So the biggest percentage is actually good, which is 45.1%, followed by average at 31.4%. And then we've got unlucky 13.7% and disappointing 9.8%. So no one's actually said poor, which I'm a little bit surprised about. I mean, I hold my hands up. I took the survey too. I obviously didn't put poor because then there would have been at least one person saying it. I'm kind of pleasantly surprised that no one did say poor though, because I think that kind of reflects a little bit on like people's outlook for the rest of the season, is that we do still think, you know, maybe we've got unlucky a few times. A few people think we've been a bit disappointing, but overall we've been either average or good. You know, I think that kind of makes it seem to me like people have a relatively sort of positive outlook and perhaps our understanding of the situation that we're in at the moment, with all these teams with spending lots of money and things. So I think that's quite, you know, that's reasonably positive. How would you rate the quality of the playing squad from 1 to 10? So 1 is the lowest, 10 being the best. We had the top category was 7 out of 10 with 19 votes at 37.3%. And then we kind of had, it's almost like a skyscraper in the middle. So we had some votes for 8, a few votes for 9, we had some votes for 6, and a few votes for 5. So no one went lower than a 5, no one went higher than a 9, which I think is right, because if you're 10 then you should be challenging for the league. So yeah, so quality of the playing squad is kind of a solid 7, with majority of people either in that category or 1 above or below. So that's, you know, that's reasonably positive. When we come to management and coaching of the team, we're actually, the highest is actually 40%, 20 respondents went for 8. So actually that is kind of suggesting to me that they have a little bit more faith in the management and coaching than they currently have in the playing squad. And I think I think that's fair. And also I think that might be some people giving kind of credit to Chris Roberts for stepping in for Dario while Dario you know, was needing to be away, obviously with the passing of his father and everything, and also to kind of also respect what Dario was obviously going through, because, you know, we don't know too much about you know, Rado's passing, but you know, it likely wasn't instantaneous, I don't believe. So this is something that could have been affecting him for a while. You know, there's lots of other things going on. He's had to step away. Chris comes in. It's, you know, you can't really put any of that at their feet. It's not their fault. It's no one's fault. And I think everyone is really pleased with not only having Dario back and that we valued him before, but also seeing the value in having Chris underneath him, who seems to be very capable of kind of, you know, taking the team in Dario's absence. So I feel like that was a big vote of confidence, you know, that the majority of people went for 8 out of 10. There's a few in 7 and a few in 9, but yeah, really positive for there. So I'm going to go for, I'll do one more and then I'll kind of get your thoughts on these, which is, how would you rate how the club is operated at boardroom/executive level? This was a little bit more of a mixed bag, which I think, again, it kind of makes sense, because I think we've spoken before about some of our issues, and believe me, we'll be continuing to speak about some of our ongoing issues as we go through. But I sense that the fans don't think that the team is at fault, and they don't think the management is at fault either. So there are obviously some people who feel that the fault lies with what the tools they've been given, effectively. So actually 7 was actually the most popular again, but this time with only 28% of the vote. And then you've got 6 out of 10, got 20% out of the vote, but we've got votes here in the 5, 4, 3, and 2 category. So no one thought 1. Fair enough. But below 6, we did have 38% people thought below 6. So that's the sizable amount of people don't think that that's working at the moment. So I'll start with you on this one, Ben. I think probably summarizing all that, like I say, it feels like there's some trust in the team. They think the team are good, but maybe could be a little bit better. They trust the management to kind of carry on, I would suggest, and that they are the right people to do the job. And then there's a little bit of skepticism around the kind of boardroom aspects of it. Do you feel that sort of represents the kind of what you would think of as the current mood around the club with regards to those issues?
I think so. I think the trouble is there's a lot of money being thrown around now, and I think we haven't thrown much. I mean, I think we bought Maylis from Chelsea, and I think we bought we bought Moeka from Roma, didn't we? And I think we probably paid for Caitlin and Nadina last year, but I think that's about all the money we spent. Whereas, obviously Arsenal and Chelsea and everyone have been chucking those big money around. And was it Leicester paid for Oriana Jean-Francois?
Aston Villa,
sorry, yes, paid like $500,000 for that kind of thing. And I think that, coupled with the fact that we did seem to miss out on the striker, and I think there's just been, I think the defence was built really well, and we got some great midfielders in, and I think those players have been let down by the fact that great striker. I'm still sitting here with my Carl Camacho fan club flag, and I think she's going to come good. But I think we didn't get Bunny Shaw in the summer. Or anyone like that. So I think that's still rankles with a lot of people. I think that we maybe the effort wasn't made, or maybe enough money wasn't put forward, or whatever. And I think that because again, as I say, the club sort of or the whole club sort of thing is that they buy cheap and sell expensive, and as a business model, that's been really good for the men's team, and for the most part, I mean, they've had a couple of blippy seasons, but for the most part, that's got them comfortably top half of the Premier League, which is where they want to be, and they're doing it in the black. And I think that sort of ethos is kind of there for the women's team as well, but that business model doesn't exist. So I think there's a certain impatience in people with saying, well, we're not talking about spending 40 million quid on a striker, because that would somewhat break the women's transfer record. You're talking, like I said, Oriane Francois went for $500,000. I'm not saying we didn't necessarily want her, but Jean-Francois, excuse me. We didn't necessarily want to buy Olivia Smith, but at the same time, have we not got sort of a few $100,000 for somebody? And I think that's what some people. But I'm sort of sympathetic to the fact that it's difficult for the club to come to terms with the fact that they can't do this thing. So I'm a bit more patient than some maybe, but I think there is that feeling that we've got this really, really good defence. We've got, goals conceded. We're one of the best in the outside the sort of top sort of 3 or 4. We're one of the tightest defences in the WSL. But at the same time, we haven't sort of finished the team. So I think that's what I think a lot of people are feeling about it. And that, I suppose, coupled with the fact that we were promised a stadium 2 years ago, and far from there being spades in the ground, we haven't even been shown the ground yet. there's. I think there's nice things at Crawley, like the fan zone. I don't get particularly, partly because of where it is. And the flags up the south stand are nice to make it feel a bit more like Brighton Stadium than Crawley's, but it's still, there still is that thing as well. Is like, come on then, get on with it. Don't just keep saying this is coming, whatever. So I think there's other things too, but I think mostly it's just the fact that the team got some really, really good marquee players in and then stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if either of you two want to come in on that, or because Ben's, I think, pretty much covered it, hasn't he? But did you guys want to add any? No, it's all right.
Going on what Claire was saying earlier, and also picking up on what Ben was saying, is particularly for somebody who isn't a fan of the men's team, it's again people going, we will run the women's team the same as the men, and they're not the same. They're in a completely the club, the Brighton men's team and the Brighton women's team are on a completely different timeline. The game itself is on a completely different timeline, and it's just that feeling that we are in danger of being left behind because these other clubs are sort of committing. Equally, I am, very keen that we have a sustainable, financially viable club, and that's always, we can all name, clubs that have not stayed financially viable and have, sold everything to go up the table and then really paid for it. But it's just that feeling of, in some respects, that the women's team is a bit of an afterthought, even though they're not going to say they're an afterthought. Like you said, we've been promised a stadium, it's not turned up. The experience at Crawley is not as good as you can get at some other stadium, etc., etc. But it's just that, well, we're going to run the women's team the same as the men's team. And, as an outsider, what have the men's team done? Well, they've got mid-table. That's not what they're saying they want for the women's team. So there just seems to be a bit of a disconnect with it. I love the fact that we've picked up, as somebody was saying in the chat, we've picked up Wack and we've picked up, Manu. Chia is the signing of the season, and Chia we got for free. So there are some absolute gems out there that you can get. But I think with the WSL at the moment, we are beyond we'll just sign everybody for free and build a team. At some point, you're going to have to say, not just for on the pitch, but off the pitch. Somebody was saying in the chat as well about, getting Lehman. I have no idea what she's like as a footballer, but she would have got eyeballs on Brighton. There are some players out there, and not necessarily her, but, we all know of them. There are players out there who would have bought eyeballs onto the team. And if there's more eyeballs on us, then more people want to come and it sort of builds up. At some point, we're going to have to get some good names to build us up. And I'm not saying her specifically, but, the sorts of players that, do bring in the new fans, going back to the question we were talking about earlier.
I think the thing with Alicia Lehman, I think there's a good reason why she's got sort of 8 million or whatever, however many it is, followers on Instagram, TikTok, etc. And it's because she wears shorts that are 3 sizes too small and pulls them right up, and that sort of thing. And I think,
just that somebody in the chat have mentioned her. But
there are. Yeah, you're right. There are players.
Organic building.
Free eyeballs on.
It takes too long.
Yeah,
well, that's essentially what happened with Fran, wasn't it? But unfortunately, Fran is starting to wind down her career. She's under contract for next season, obviously, but something could happen at the end of the season. We don't know, but it's possible. So even if she does stay another year, you've still got to have someone who is the new person. Yeah. And it feels like it's almost like a bit negligent to just have one person in the first place anyway, because then they assume all the focus and all the attention is on them. And I don't think that creates a very harmonious squad, to be honest with you. No. If one player is constantly being, we want to interview, do you want to interview this person? Nah, no thanks. We want them, or we don't want to do an interview. It's like that doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't sit well. And
I think that's the media landscape that we've got, isn't it? That's the trouble.
Exactly. But obviously Arsenal, they can go, oh well, Chloe Kelly's not available. Would you like to interview Beth Mead? Oh yeah, all right. Beth Mead.
That's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? That if you don't have recognisable names in your squad, the media doesn't highlight you. They're not interested. And if you're not being highlighted, then fans outside of the top.
I mean that's. I mean, I'm not going to accuse the British women's football media of being lazy at all, but they do like it if you do a lot of their work for them.
Yeah.
And they know that if they write, 800 words, 2,000 words, whatever, about Beth Mead or Frank Kirby or Leslie Russo or whatever, they'll get clicks.
Yeah.
Whereas if they write, a nice, lovely, brilliant, beautiful feature interview piece about Maisie Simons, they'll get some.
Yeah.
But that's on the club. But part of that is on the club to bombard the media with stuff about Maisie and stuff about. I mean, like I said, you kind of need a hook. We've got the daughter of a 5-time Super Bowl winner. As I keep having to remind Duncan, she is her own person. She's not just Charles Haley's daughter. She isn't, Duncan. She's not. She's her own person. But that's a hook. You've got that brings the attention in. That's like, we send out basically. I used to write press releases, and I'd see them basically just printed on cycling websites. These sort of news websites, and they just create it, to present it as if it was a news story they'd created. But it was just basically me. I mean, they jiggled a bit of it around, but it was basically my words would just go straight up on there as if it was a news story. And you do that and say Maddie's got this hook, Super Bowl winner's daughter. You chuck that out into the sort of media sphere, and people will start printing it and suddenly people are interested in Maddie Haley because she's her own person, Duncan, but also her dad, and that's just that to say that's just sort of hook to bring sort of eyeballs in. And I think rather than waiting around for someone to phone up and not ask for Fran, you need to be chucking, this. Obviously it's difficult because she's been injured for the best part of the season and a half, but we've got this big sort of Tanzanian superstar. If Aisha ever gets back on the pitch, there's a hook. East African. How many East African footballers are there? That you've heard of. She's just and just loads and loads and loads and loads of interesting things about this player, which we're going to throw at you, and it's going to really win.
Yeah, I think.
And so hopefully one day it won't be just you got Beth Mead's phone number. Yeah. Right.
I suppose that's kind of what the questions kind of lead to, is like people don't seem to feel like it's necessarily the players' fault or that the players aren't good enough, but maybe I think a sort of a 7 with some 6s and 8s tells you we're not done. We need, if we want to go forwards, we need to get better. But also, again, the coaching being a kind of an 8 with some 7s and 9s tells you they don't really, fans don't really think it's a coaching issue either. So then although 7 was the most popular for boardroom and executive level, when you see everything from a 2 right up to a 10, although there's only 1 2 and only 1 10, you sort of get the impression that that's where people feel like we're falling down somewhere. And obviously boardroom / executive level covers an enormous amount of people, like involved in the backroom running of the club. So that's quite a broad way of saying it, I guess, but I do think that is what people feel, is like it's not the players' fault, we just need a few better players, and it's not the coach's fault, they just need a few better players. Who's going to get them the better players? It's the boardroom, the executives, the management, etc. So, that kind of feels, again, quite congruous with the results. So we're on to season ticket questions here, and I've got the first one. I've got a comment on this, so we'll go to Claire on this one. So, how good value do you believe the current season ticket prices are? And this was a 1 to 5 scale. So we had 40%, 41% actually for 5 out of 5. So really good value. We had 47, basically 48% said 4 out of 5. And we had just a few votes, 5, which equated to 11.4% for 3. No 2s, no 1s. So no one thinks it's outrageous. But what I was going to point out is the people rating it 5 out of 5 has gone from 70% last year to 41% this year. So, Claire, do you think the ever increasing, because they're never going to go down, are they? No. The ever increasing season ticket holder prices, the season ticket prices, do you think they're starting to get into the realm where people are having to question whether they can afford them, particularly, say, for example, if you're a couple or a family?
Yes, I think that is going to come into it. But I think the biggest issue we have is they will put these next season's ticket sales on sale in April, May, to try and get you to sign up. And whatever it goes up to, it goes up to. It's up to you then whether you can afford to pay for it. But I think a lot of people would have looked last season and gone, oh, I'm getting mine again because we got Frank Kirby last season. So I bet we get someone good in the summer this season. And then it didn't happen. And so people are a bit like, oh, we're not quite as good as we was last season, and I'm paying more for it. So because I think, fans have to be realistic. If you want to have a Frank Kirby signed every season, you're going to have to pay for that. That needs paying for, and that will require season ticket prices going up. But I think most people won't have a problem with that. If you signed Beth Mead in the summer and you signed, I don't know, someone else, big name or whatever, and we got a couple of big names come in, I think most people would go, oh, worth the 20 quid extra in my season ticket price. But we're going to have to put our trust in the club before that happens. So we have to decide already beforehand, do we want to pay that extra 20, 30 quid they're going to put on top before knowing whether or not they're going to pull their finger out and get the players that we as a club want to see playing for our team. And I think that's where the struggle comes from. And I think that's why you've probably got the comments you've got this, or the marking down, is because people probably did think at the beginning of the season it was worth it. But then they got to the end of the summer transfer window, didn't get the players in that they're expecting. We haven't had the results that we were expecting and wanting to see, whether that's through luck or whatever, bad luck. It hasn't resulted in us being in the top 5 again. And I think people will be like, I don't know if that's worth an extra. If you're going to put it up again next season, is that worth it? I don't know. You need to be proving to me that there's something coming for my extra cash.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and actually kind of speaks to the next question, which was in regards to season ticket prices rising. What you would do if the season ticket prices rose, and 53.5% essentially said they would pay it, but they'd expect the additional revenue to translate somehow. And I haven't got the figures here for 2025, but if I remember rightly, that was pretty much the same last season. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head. There were people last season saying, okay, I'll pay the extra amount, but I want to see it translate into something. Yeah. And actually, we're lower in the table now than we were last season.
Well, we're lower in the table, but also there is this thing of, I absolutely get what Ben was saying about we've got these great players. We know that because we've looked into them and we're interested in them. But if you're somebody who's kind of quite new to the game, or as your experience of women's football has come from the Lionesses, these players that we've got are nobodies. Nobody's heard of them. Nobody cares. Do you know what I mean? Like, the media doesn't care. The club doesn't really do much. I mean, social media-wise, you can't ask for any more for Aisha. She gets all of the likes and clicks and comments whenever they post anything about her. But none of that translates to people's bums on seats. It doesn't get people in. And I think it's the same thing, you know, the likes of Maddie and her dad. Like, I don't know who her dad is. I couldn't care less. Doesn't mean anything to me because I'm not an American football fan. And again, if it's going to be of interest to American football fans, which are more likely to be in America and aren't going to be bums on seats at Brighton. And this is the problem that all of women's football has outside of that top four. If you don't have a recognisable name in your squad that other people can go, oh, they've got Fran Kirby. I've heard of her. And that's why the media wants to talk about her. That's why everybody wants to talk to her. It's because she's the only one in our squad that most of them have heard of.
I suppose, I mean, different scale, but Arsenal probably have a similar thing with, you know, everybody always wants to talk to Beth Mead, yep. Chloe Kelly, Michelle Adjumang, and Olivia Smith now.
Yeah.
And, you know, Victoria Palova's like, hello.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Now, Arsenal fans absolutely can tell you everything about Palova because they've invested already and they're in. They're in it, and they can tell you every player in their club. Just like
but the media doesn't talk about them.
Yeah,
they don't even talk about Mariona.
Raki Maki. We can big up Sophie Bangley. We know them, but outside of this little microcosm of fan group, nobody knows any of them. And I don't think even if the club were to just go bombarding everybody with info about them, there still would be a case of most people in that sort of lioness realm of which is where most people are coming newly to football from. They're just like, I don't know anybody that plays for Brighton. So, you know, even the youngsters don't even really know Fran Kirby because she hasn't played for England for a couple of seasons now. Do you know what I mean? So, like, there's going to be a generation of fans coming through now who don't even know who Fran Kirby is.
A really good point on here made by Tim and agreed with by Charlie, which is the cup games used to be included and now we have to pay for them. And although that's only, I think it's like £3 a game or whatever it is, it's a nominal amount.
But that
could, and that could be the reason for a lot of people who would have given it 5 out of 5 brilliant value going, it's still good value. It's still really good value, but it's not as good value as it once was because not only do prices go up, it's the old shrinkflation thing. Not only have prices gone up, we're also expected to pay for more things.
Yeah, so, we've got 4 or 5 fewer games in that ticket.
Also,
which actually is a sort of like 30% decrease, really. Because you're talking, I mean, it's 11 WSL games, and it was 11 WSL plus 3, well, really 4 League Cup this year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
No, sorry, actually, but it would have been 2 League Cup plus potentially an FA Cup.
Yeah.
Oh no, we had Forest at home, didn't we? Yeah. So that would have been 14 games, and then obviously we might have, you know, obviously had West Ham away, and we've now got Arsenal away. But it could have been a couple of extras also included. So it could have been potentially 16 games, and it's now only 11.
Yeah.
So,
but also the training event, we're now paying for that. So I think the year before, I was and this was one of the reasons why I became a full season ticket holder, was everyone was saying to me, oh, they did this wonderful training event and open training. And I went, oh, that's lovely. And it was on my list of benefits when I, became a season ticket holder. All open training, fantastic. And then it became you will get an invitation and you can then pay for it. And we paid for it, and it wasn't brilliant. So it's exactly as you say,
it was crap.
It's not
really,
just
were probably
up, but I was trying to be a bit,
I know you were
diplomatic.
Not only are the prices going up, but then you're losing your cup games. The training event is rubbish. Again, they tried to smush the men's and women's together for some reason, and I think we just, the women's fans sort of missed out on it.
I think what they attempted to do was, I think they wanted to try and grow the fan base, and they thought if they could get some of the men's fans on board, that would happen. And it just didn't work because whatever they did, I don't know if it was so rushed or whatever, but every single men's fan that was sitting anywhere near me was just grumbling and moaning that they had to sit there and watch women's football. And you couldn't even see it because it was across the other side of the pitch. You know, it was really just awful.
Well, I don't think it was. You know, the men's fans didn't get much men's football value either because it was up on that upper tier, wasn't it? And so it wasn't. You know, normally in an open training thing, you'd be in the sort of front rows of the MX, and you'd be able to, you know, you'd get front row view of it and stuff, and then you'd get autographs or whatever afterwards. But they obviously, for some reason, didn't want any contact, and so it was miles away. So I don't think anybody, you know, the women's fans felt shortchanged, but I think the men's fans did too.
The club just completely misread the room, didn't it?
Yeah, it just didn't work at all.
The point of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some lessons have been learned.
Well, you would
hopefully, yeah. I'm hoping certainly. I don't know what will happen with the men's, but hopefully with the women's, we'll see a return. Hopefully to something like, you know, the occasion before. So I'll wrap a couple of these up because some of these are kind of no-brainers in a way. But do you think there should be fan consultation before planned season ticket increases? 87.2% yes. And then there were a few don't knows and a couple of no's. Now, this is something we've spoken about a lot, so we'll cover it, but I won't throw this one out to you because I think we all know how we kind of feel about it. But the season ticket holder rows in favour or against. We had 56.5% against and 34.8% not sure. So that's probably a lot of people who don't realise that even happens, which wouldn't surprise me. And then in favour, 8.7%. So I think we can quite safely say that the against have
I think clearly a couple of Arsenal fans must have got hold of the survey.
Possibly. You never know. There's always going to be a little bit of an aberration somewhere here or there. And if not, why not? Basically, all of the reasons above, which were season ticket holders have last pick of the available areas. Season ticket holders can't move more centrally. It affects the atmosphere because season ticket holders are not grouped together. Casual or opposition fans end up between rows of season ticket holders, etc., etc. So yeah, all of the above was the top response with 14. But also those who didn't go for all of the above went for it affects the atmosphere because season ticket holders are not grouped together. So I think that's the key. The key sort of issue is that, you know, we can't all sit together even though we're all the hardcore fans. So we're kind of, I think that kind of covers that one really. We've spoken about it before. We have lodged our appeal into the club. Whether that anything will change with that, I do not know, but we'll find out in the fullness of time, I'm sure. So now we come to fan interaction. So this is back to a scale of 0 to 10. 10 being, you know, you feel incredibly valued, and actually this was a really mixed bag. There was between 6, 7, 8, and 9. They all had either 18 or 20% of the vote, so that was almost 80% of everyone was concentrated to between 6 and 9. So I think that kind of tells you that there is, again, some positivity about how valued you feel as a supporter of the club. But equally, there being as many 6s as there is 9s is a bit concerning, because I think, to me, a 6 is not a positive score. I know that on a scale of 0 to 10, technically a 6 is, but I wouldn't score anything a 6 if I didn't think there was some issues there. So again, I think we've kind of probably covered a little bit of why that is, but this one I think is the one I'll kind of put out to you guys, and you know, we can have a chat about. On a scale of 1 to 10, again, how valued do you feel your opinion or voice is by the club? Now, with this question, slightly different to the first one, we have the highest proportion was 23% who said 6. And we then go down to 19% for both 5 and 7. But we did have a couple of 1s. We did have 4 2s. We had 3s, 4s. We had everything except a 9. But yeah, as I say, it's more concentrated, kind of a bracket down. So not 6 to 9. It's more like 5 to 8. I'll start with Abby first on this one. How, obviously, you probably took the survey and you've kind of had your say on how you feel your voice is valued by the club, but in general, do you think there is a discrepancy between how valued you feel as a fan, but then in response as a fan, when you are something of the club, it's not necessarily a two-way street? Are you thinking diplomatically again?
No, I am trying to be diplomatic. I don't feel massively valued as a fan. I mean, I've never really asked anything specific of the club, so that's a bit harder to sort of say. But so just as an example, there's an event coming up that we have been invited to. And if you were a season ticket holder that went to every game, you were in the first tranche of invite. I'm pretty sure I've been to every single game this season at home, but I was not included in that. And I got an email saying, as you've been to 5 or more games, then we're now including you. So I don't feel very valued. It happened again last season. At the end of the season, we got this thing that came out and said, oh, if you've been to this amount of games, you get a silver a statue or something. They were completely wrong. Mine were wrong and Mum's were wrong. And I'm very much, if you can't do that right, don't do it. I didn't ask you to do it. I didn't want you to do it. But you did it and you got it wrong. So I don't feel like I'm being counted properly. And it's the same with sort of like this event. That some people were invited, some people weren't. It's because we are in groups together and we talk, it seems that this is being run slightly differently to a men's event. So I'm now sort of like, oh, really? It's a women's event, but yet you're not running it the same as, I now feel less valued. You hear about, if the men's team, they go away to this game on Valentine's Day, so we'll give you a pie and a pint or whatever the heck they gave away. Doesn't happen for the women's team. So I do sometimes, as a women's fan, because I'm not a fan of the men's team, I do sometimes feel a bit like the poor cousin, sort of like, like when you turn up to a wedding and you're single and you get shoved on a table with all the little kids or something, that sort of that feeling every so often. So I don't feel massively valued. I don't think that I'm not valued, but
you think that's why there's more 5s and 6s as opposed to 7s and 8s?
Yeah. It's I don't feel like I'm not valued, but I think they value the men's supporters more.
Yeah, that's actually a very good way.
That's something I've had to fight against all my life as a woman in very male-dominated areas, because I've always worked, and operated in very male-dominated areas, and it's kind of feeling the same, that I'm having to do the same for my hobby. I'm having to shout that little bit louder or try that little bit harder to be valued the same as if I went and watched the men's team.
Absolutely. Would you go along with that, Claire, that about, kind of the difference between, the how sort of valued you are as a supporter versus how valuable you think your opinion is to them?
Yeah.
Or is it kind of one and the same more for you?
Well, I think I agree with what Abby says. I don't really expect much from any football club. Like, I don't sit here thinking, well, Liverpool haven't asked me my opinion on blah, blah, blah this season. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't need to, because they just get the job done. And I think that's the issue I have with Brighton, is it seems very half-hearted. It's like, maybe we should have done something for this, or we should do something. Do you want to just sort that out tomorrow with the 5 minutes you've got in between sorting everything else out for the men's game? And it just feels like it is very half-hearted. Like I say, I don't have my notifications on necessarily for everything. I am inundated with emails in my work. I do not want emails popping up, so I turn them off. And because I turn them off, I don't get invited to things. I never get an invite. because it doesn't matter how many games I've been to, that won't come through, because that's the only way they communicate with people, is to send an email. You know, they have a text messaging system because they send you a text message out to tell you the game's postponed. Why can't they send out a text message as well? Why can't they make sure that they are reaching the people that they want to reach? But it always just feels a bit weird, like we're having an international celebration of International Women's Day tomorrow, and the first 5 or 6 people I heard of that got invited were all men. And you're like, how's that working then? How is your system set up that you're not putting your female supporters top of that list of invitations for the first send out? Now, obviously, if people can't go and you've got spaces open, fine, send them out to the guys that are very supportive of women's football and women's supporting. Yep. But the fact that there were women who have gone to at least 10 games this season at home and didn't get an invite, but men did. You're like, what? How are you working this out? Like, this is not making us as women feel very valued as supporters here.
We're smashing the patriarchy from the inside.
Do you know what I mean? But do you know what I mean? It's those kind of things that you just think, well, what's the point? The same with, like, you know, they wanted to set up a band, they wanted to set up an atmosphere section, but once it gets going, you're left to it. You're on your own. There's nobody there supporting you or going, how's it going? Or anything we can do to support this, anything we can do to make this better. Can we give you some marketing? There's nothing unless somebody is pressing for it all the time. And those are the things that, to me, is, if you don't want to do it, don't offer it. But don't be half-hearted. Don't be sitting there asking us to do things for you, to market stuff, to bring the atmosphere up, to get things going, and then not be willing to step up and say anything we can do to help.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I feel like, as fans, we're not valued. They see us as cheap and easy marketing, and we can do it all for them, and that's all they need to worry about. Just let you get on with it.
Yeah, and Charlie brings up a very good point in the comments, which is there's much less women's fans. So in fact, you almost really need to do more to try and retain them. There are a lot of blokes who you could throw a cup of cold tea over them before a game. They're still walking in the stadium and watch the game. Whereas, like, we know for a fact that the women's game is more transient.
Yeah.
So therefore, you need to do a lot to keep people there. Yeah. And I think, you know, that is a struggle, and often, you know, like you say, it becomes, you know, there are departments within the club that are dealing with a lot of men's football, you know, issues, queries, where, you know, just generalized work, which generates more money, which ergo makes it more important in the hierarchy of things. But then the simple answer to that is to separate off, even if it's just one person that's responsible for the women's team, and kind of let the person who's responsible for the men's, you know, it might be a group of people for the men's team, let them concentrate on that and not have to split off time for the women's team, where it kind of seems like a side project almost, and let someone actually concentrate on them full time.
Yeah.
And therefore start to do a lot of these things we would like to see implemented. So I must admit, you know, I think we are starting to see some movement. I think as a supporters club, we have started to be, you know, for full disclosure, we were invited to attend International Women's Day, and we are, us four, along with my wife and daughter, and another family member of one of the fan advisory board members. So we will be fulfilling our quota, and I think that's you know, if you've got two supporters groups, you know, and SheGulls have been established obviously for quite a long time, you know, that should be the sort of thing that we're invited to. But in the past it might not have been the sort of thing we were invited to. So, or maybe it would have just been me, which, you know, again, I don't always feel 100% comfortable with. I mean, I want to be at these things because I support the women's team, but equally, especially, you know, like you say, on International Women's Day, I'm glad that I think between the 7 of us that are going, it's 2 blokes and five women basically. So that feels more appropriate. You know, it's to my weird sort of reconciliation of it all. We are bringing the right people to the right place, if that makes sense. So I think from that element there's starting to be some movement, but you know, again, it always feels like a little bit of an uphill battle, and I think it's just we need some right people in the right places to grease some of those wheels and get things moving, you know, moving quicker and things like that. So there we go. So on a similar note, I'll come out with this next one, and then I'll go to you, Ben, to see if this, you know, makes any difference to your thoughts. But on the question, do you believe fan interaction is increasing or has increased since last season? We have 42.9% yes, 32.7% no, and 24.5% don't know. So yes is still the most popular, but it's not miles ahead of no, which itself is not miles ahead of don't know. So does that kind of have any bearing on, you know, your opinion of sort of how valued you are as a supporter, and whether that is becoming a better experience year on year?
I don't know. I mean, I think, again, as Claire was saying, I don't necessarily expect anything. I think to a certain extent, again, I mean, the guys in the comments sort of talking about the players and the management and things. There's certainly, you know, a good amount of interaction with the players, but then that's been, you know, I think that's been going on for, you know, that's not really changed much in you know, the last sort of few seasons or whatever. You know, sort of post-match stuff, selfies, autographs, etc. You know, Dario comes around with handshakes quite, you know, pretty much all the away games and very often the home games too. So, you know, I think, I don't know, I think, and that's for the, I mean, the club, I mean, I get told about things and I mean, there are they do send out fan surveys after, you know, after the games and stuff, whether or not they read the replies, I'm not sure. Because I probably put the same thing every time. There was an Arsenal fan sitting behind me. But I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, I suppose, I mean, I'm a middle-aged man. I'm a football fan. I go to the football and I watch the football, and that's really, you know, I like high-fiving the captain because I think she's great. But other than that, I'm not really bothered about interacting with the club particularly. I mean, I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. You know, obviously, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I was really looking forward to the other night. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be. I mean, that's a really nice thing. Actually, we didn't mention that when we were talking about the, you know, the open training and stuff. This is something they have not done before, so this is sort of extra thing they've thrown in, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, I you know, like I said, they don't throw a cup of cold tea over me before the game. They didn't need to.
That was the worst thing I could think of you could do to him.
Yeah, but yeah, so they don't. I mean, they don't do anything bad. So that's good. So that's all I'm really expecting. You know, I go to the football. You know, I've got my regular seat and I sit in it and I watch the game. And you know, like I said, the players are great after the game. Lots of them come round. Lots of them, blah blah blah. Dario, the stewards at Crawley are always really nice. So there's a couple of jobs with, but it's mostly the sort of the youngsters are all really good fun, aren't they? So it's a nice afternoon, and so that's what I'm in it for. You know.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's that, you know, the added value, isn't it, is what probably makes it go from a sort of a 6 or 7, which is like, yeah, they kind of tell me everything I need to know, and you know, like, I'm a fan, so they want me to come along and they send me emails and stuff like that. You know, that's all the stuff they probably should be doing anyway. And I think what makes it go up to like a higher level when you feel really valued is these sorts of, you know, like the, you know, the men getting a pie and a pint at Newcastle or something. That's the sort of thing where, like, if I was answering a survey quite close to that, you know, when that had happened, and you said, how valued do you feel, you know, by the club, I'd probably bump it up a point or two. Or when we all got given the shirts and stuff at the end of last season with the women's fixtures and stuff, which I actually, thinking about it now, I actually really appreciated they actually had the women's fixtures put on, because what they could have done was just put Brighton Hove Albion on the front and given you one of them. And actually, the fact that they did it for the men, they put the men's fixtures on, fair enough, but they did another run for us to have the women's fixtures on there. That's the sort of thing that actually, you know, I probably didn't respect it or notice it as much at the time, but you know, thinking about it latterly, that was a good thing to do. It was the right thing to do. So you know, things like that, small details, almost, as it were.
Like you say, if you want to say it's one club, one city, whatever, then you have to be treating them the same.
Yeah.
And if you're giving something to the men's team fans when they go on a long trip somewhere, then you should be doing that. And you know, as the guys have said, that when we go away to like Man United or something, there's like 30, 40 of us. It's how much is that costing you to buy a pint? In fact, you can't even buy a pint at the women's games most of the time. So even if you just said to everybody, here's a voucher to get, you know, a drink and a pie on us. What is that costing you compared with what you've just spent to do that at the men's away game, where it's going to be thousands going?
Yeah,
you know, and it's little things like that. It's that thing of, like you say, if you're going to do it, do it. If you're not, then don't. But don't do it for both, and do it for both.
Yeah,
you know, it's silly. It's just, yeah. I think there's not much, like I say, that I really want them to listen to me about. Like, but things like the empty row, I think that's a really important thing, that they should be listening to their fans. But their fans are saying this is ruining our experience of the game. You should be listening to that, not just fobbing us off with, well, that's how we're doing it. You know, because that's what will end up eventually, people going, do you know what, I'm not going to that Arsenal game. I'm not going because I don't want to sit there surrounded by Arsenal fans and things like that, or Chelsea fans, or Man United fans.
Yeah, and just like I'm saying, if you gave me a pie and a pint when I went to an away game, I'd probably bump you up a mark. If I've just sat amongst Arsenal fans in my own home ground and been drowned out by them waffling on about next week's game or something that's way more important than this one, then I'm going to mark you down a point. You know, so I think it is swings and roundabouts, but I think there are some positive changes. But again, it just needs to be. It needs to be more. It needs to be more consultation, more frequency, all that sort of thing. And you know, it needs to continue, because especially if we aren't going to become a top 4 team, I'm not saying we're not, but you know, if we are going to have to, if we are going to have to kind of settle for mid-table, then you need to be doing something else. You know, like we said with London Lionesses, and actually this is something that will come up later in some of the comments. You know they're not challenging this season, so they're trying to do other things to make you feel welcome as a fan. They're giving stuff away. They're giving a free hot chocolate, a scarf, a program, blah blah blah. So they're saying, okay, we're not going to win the league, but what a good experience this is to come and visit our stadium. You know, and we've talked many times before about how in the women's game, women's team fans tend to be more focused on the overall experience rather than the specificities of the game itself. So all those things are important. So I'm getting ahead of myself because we've got questions on the stadium. So I'll come to that shortly. So all that being said, though, 75%, 75%, give or take a 0 point, said that the experience of being a Brighton women's team fan is increasing positively year on year. So most people do think it is increasing positively. Again, I think that may have something to do with the fact that there is more of a community element to it now, as opposed to they suddenly feel like this season we've kind of made a big leap in something that we're doing, because it doesn't feel like that seems logical. So I would put that down to that. So now we've got a bit about what would you like to see the club doing more of, or something new they could implement to get more Albion women's fans. So I'll go through this relatively quickly. I've picked out a couple of sort of topics which came up a few times, and you'll be pleased to know I think there were at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there was at least 5 comments saying that we need a striker. and or a lioness. So that was quite a big one.
It was one of those comments filled in by Mr. D. Vidicic.
It could have been. Yeah, it could have been. And again, there's some things that we've spoken about already. So a proper open training session that's centered around the women's team, improved marketing and budgets. Good players should be paid more and stay longer. That's always a good one. We've got a couple about the stadium. Be more honest about we're coming to the stadium, so I won't go into that too in depth. But we had a few about the stadium. In some cases, along the lines of like to see more games at the Amex or in the Brighton vicinity, and then a couple that were more along the lines of, well, what the heck is going on with it? You know, if you actually put pen to paper, if you put voice to audio and say where it's going to be, then you might start, you know, getting a few more fans coming in anticipation of it opening in a few seasons time. So all good stuff. Thank you very much for all those comments. So we are coming on now to the section about the proposed stadium. So how important is a new stadium in Brighton and Hove to you, the respondent? 5 out of 5, so 49% went for 5 out of 5. So about half of the respondents pretty much said it's really important. It's very, very important that we get this new stadium. Then we had 31% said 4 out of 5, and then we've got kind of 4, 2, 3, and 4 for 1, 2, and 3. Just to confuse everyone. So the majority said 4 or 5, and I think probably the ones who went 3, 2, or 1 more than likely are people who probably live closer to Crawley. You know, which I think is absolutely fair enough, because a new stadium in Brighton and Hove is not necessarily high on their agenda, because it's quite convenient for them to just, you know, pop down the road to Crawley. But I would suggest that it does seem that it is still quite an important you know, topic to Brighton fans is the new stadium, and you know, I think we probably all expected that. Next question was about where it should be. It was 62.7% the Falmer or Amex campus, basically. Then we had nearly 20% with anywhere as long as it's in Brighton and Hove, and then this is where, you know, I'm suggesting the people from Crawley come in. 13.7% said I'd rather it remained in Crawley or nearby. So again, I think 62.7% suggesting it should be on the Falmer Amex campus makes sense. It's what we've heard in rumours. Obviously, we're not privy to any information over and above what everyone else has kind of been discussing for a long time, but would seem to make sense given it already has a car park, a train station, facilities, terrace, etc., etc. So that kind of makes sense. This is where I'll probably bring you guys in on. So what would be the main considerations you would like to see addressed with the new stadium? Number one, and I think for the second consecutive year, was parking and transport. So the number one issue for Brighton women fans when it comes to new stadium is, how do I get there and how do I stay there for a couple of hours while I watch the game? Okay. And I think you can't underestimate how important that is. You know, again, I think the women's game is different. The men's game, it's like, well, I'll get on a train or I'll get on a bus or I'll get the park and ride. You know, like, yes, you'd like it to be smooth sailing, but you expect you're going to be packed on, you know, some sort of transport with a few sweaty people, and you know, it's kind of it's part of it, right? Whereas, you know, a lot of people in the women's game are, you know, the whole experience can include things like not being able to park, or, you know, not having, you know, a proper place to park your car, and you've brought your family and things like that. So that is very important. And then kind of the next tier down is location and atmosphere. So obviously location kind of comes along with parking and transport. So they both had quite high percentages, and an atmosphere, which I think probably speaks to the fact that it's hard to generate atmosphere in Crawley because of the way the stadium is organised. You know, and it's not for lack of trying by any of the people with interest in doing so. Absolutely not. You know, it's not that something. It's not something any one fan or any group of fans has not done. It just is the situation when you don't have a full stadium, and the stadium has on one side essentially got
a tent.
A tent, a glorified tent.
Yeah.
The other side is often empty because there's only 10 fans from Everton or whatever. And then the standing side, again, depending on who the opposition is, can be pretty empty as well. So, you know, if Arsenal are in town, you know, we can get it rocking. But if it's, you know, if it's West Ham, it can be the opposite. So that clearly, obviously, is something sort of still important to people. So I'll start with you, Ben, on this one. What would be, if there was one thing that you just wish was really simple, or could happen, you know, kind of almost like at the click of the finger, what for you would it be at the new stadium? Would it be just the ease of getting to it and you know, making sure that's not an issue for anyone, or would it kind of be having that raucous atmosphere?
I think actually that one follows the other, doesn't it? If you make it, I mean that is, I mean, it's, the thing about Broadfield is partly because it's in Crawley, but it's also in an area of Crawley that you have to drive to. You know, there's obviously there's the free bus service they put on from the Amex, but otherwise, if you want to get up there not in your own car, you've got to get the train to Three Bridges. And then you've got to change at Three Bridges and get the train to Crawley, and then you've still got a mile to walk. And so that, you know, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I think if it was near Three Bridges station, if Broadfield was like within a half a mile of Three Bridges, I'm sure there would be more people coming up from Brighton.
I think you're right.
But it's such a faff to get to Broadfield that you know that I think that's a major obstacle for a lot of people. You know, if you drive up, you know, there's so few parking spaces around the area, around the stadium. You know, I don't think you're not supposed to park in the K2, are you? Or I don't know if people do, but
you're allowed, but obviously,
yeah. But like I said, it's such a faff, and I think just the fact that if you made it easier, so if it was at Falmer, you have got the trains that go direct. There's literally 4 trains an hour out to Falmer. They're packed when the men play at home. Obviously, they'll be getting busier, hopefully, but they won't be as busy for the women's games. But then also, there's like, you know, I don't think they generally use the university car parks for women's games at the Amex, do they? But they potentially could do. I don't know how much that costs or whatever. So there are potentially lots of car parks. And obviously, I mean, I've driven to a few games at the Amex, sort of men's games, and it's one of those things you really don't want to do because
if you can avoid it,
it takes you sort of an hour to get to the stadium, and then it takes you so long to get out again. But again, there would be less volume at the women's game, so it would be less. So I think if it was, e.g. at Falmer, where there are communications and there is parking, but there's also probably there's a lot of buses go past there, there's trains go past there from Lewis as well. So people coming in from East Sussex. Obviously, if you're coming from Crawley, you've got to change at Brighton, but it's not that difficult. Then I think, going to the game would be a much more pleasurable experience, and so the atmosphere would build from that, I think. So that's got to be the, I think that there was a big trend in the olden days. I suppose the Amex is one of those where they would build the stadiums out of town, and it basically meant that everybody had to drive to it. I remember I used to live in Reading. I'd still like to think that a very small Frank Kirby was walking around Prospect Park and saw this handsome chap playing Sunday League football and went, "I want to be like him, mummy." But they used to play in a place called Elm Park, which is right in the middle of Reading. I mean, it was a tiny little place. No, sort of surrounded by houses, no scope for expanding or like that. And obviously they were coming up through the league, so they had to go somewhere bigger. And they built this enormous stadium down by the M4. But it's so far out of town that everybody has to drive to it, as far as I can tell, and stuff. And it's just horrible. And that sort of thing. Whereas at least the Amex is not in the centre of Brighton, obviously, but it is on the train line, and there's loads of buses. Blah blah blah. I mean, it's walkable from town if you're the sort of person who doesn't mind walking a few miles. I mean, again, generally, if I go to men's games, I'll get the train up there, and then you look at the queue for the train. You can wait half an hour for the trains, especially after the AEK Athens game in the Europa League a few seasons ago. It was absolutely hammering it down. So I just walked back in the pouring rain. So it takes about an hour to walk back into Brighton, which isn't that bad. But I think that if you can make it easy for people to get there, then I think as Kevin Costner once said, as it were, so that's the big thing, and from that everything else will follow.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Yeah, one little thing can kind of, I wouldn't say it can ruin it, but if you arrive at the game stressed, if you're a bit late, if for whatever reason, and then especially being Brighton fans, we don't often score the first goal. You're sort of like, well, no, I was already annoyed, and now we've gone 1-0 down. And like you say, that can kind of lead on to other things. So, Claire, do you kind of go along with Ben? It sort of has to be if you want the atmosphere, you've kind of got to make everything else kind of up to scratch and as seamless as possible, to make it that full experience, and not just, okay, we shouted loud, but I've had a bit of a horror day.
I mean, I don't know. I think atmosphere comes from several things, and I think mostly it's what's happening on the pitch. If your team is playing well, if they're making it exciting and they're getting you up out your seat, that's automatically just going to generate oohs and ahs. Do you know what I mean? Even if it doesn't do anything else. I think having an orchestrated, proper, kind of supportive club who are supportive of things, like if they're going to have a band, do it properly. Don't just set them up and then just go on your own, see you later, bye. And maybe have a conversation with fans in the ground around where they want noise like that to be, because it's very weird with the atmosphere section. I think it's done the complete opposite of what they expected it to do, and it's now that's where you make atmosphere and nobody else does anything. It's just, if you're only making noise, if you're allowed, you're only in that section, that's the only time you're allowed to make noise. I think that people in the ground have totally misread what it means. But I think, the whole stadium in general, if you've got your own stadium and we will be the first people that have a seat like that. We'll be the first people that's my seat and I'm sitting in it until I die type thing. That's exciting in itself. Do you know what I mean? To be part of something new like that, to be like, I don't mind paying a bit extra because I get to sit here or I get to sit there. But if they just transfer all the silly rules from Crawley to a new stadium, that's just going to be lost for a start. And I think, I have to travel no matter where I come from, whether I go to Crawley or I go to Brighton. I find it easier to travel to Crawley, as in the drive, but sometimes it's a git to park if we've got an Arsenal team. And I found it actually, as much as it is a pain in the backside at Brighton, parking is a lot easier sometimes because that there is space. If you've booked it, you're in. Getting out can be a bit of a pain, but now the terrace is there. I'd be happy to hang around and have a drink if I didn't have to rush home and get anywhere. I think it swings and roundabouts. I think the club's going to have to be really, really clever how they do it, because you've cultivated a whole group of people in Crawley to come and support your club, and now you're going to move and tell all of those people they've got to get themselves down to Brighton, which Ben's just said is a pain in the arse because it's a change at the station and all of that.
It's the reverse journey.
So you're going to have to do the reverse and provide coaches and buses that bring people from Crawley down. If you're gonna build the fan base, you need to do what you do for the men's game, which is provide the park and ride somewhere. If the parking is too much at the ground, it should be easier at a bigger stadium. It should work easier at having it in the Falmer kind of area right next to the Amex, because that's all set up for 30,000 people, and we're not going to have 30,000 people for a long, long time. So they should easily be able to deal with 3,000 to 10,000 people, you know, wanting to park and travel there. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all got potential. It just all depends on how the club wants to do it.
Absolutely. Abby, anything to add on that as far as you're concerned there?
Better coffee.
Well, that's a good
coffee. Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Yeah.
It couldn't get much worse, could it?
The coffee at the terrace is good, isn't it?
Yeah. Really good points. The one thing to remember, though, about using public transport from Falmer is the women play on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Mostly. Yeah. And that's the day that whoever it is that runs the railway decides they're going to stop all the rail trains. So, yes, it is, Falmer's a natural place for it to go. But I think we're all sort of, sitting here going, oh, yes, transport's going to be so easy. But it's not always. I think the last Falmer game that we went to, my goddaughter and I, we decided to drive because there was a rail replacement service from Eastbourne to Lewis. And by the time, one of us was injured. And by the time you've got to the train station, then got on a bus, then got on a train, then, done this, that, and you might as well have just driven over and paid the 10 quid to park.
Yeah.
Even though it was a pain to get out. But it's all of those things and everything else. But Claire hit on a really, really good point, is if they don't do something soon or they don't announce it soon, there's going to be a huge fan base building up around Crawley that, again, then going to be left high and dry. Because if they don't provide transport down, then they're all just going to go northwards. And I used to run a business along the south coast, and our biggest problem was that every branch you had only had 180 degrees of capture. So because half of it was sea. But actually being up in Crawley, what we lose potentially from not coming up from Brighton, we might gain from coming down from, London and other places, and from in Crawley, are they going to translate down? So if they are going to do it, I just want them to get on with it. Because, we're riding a good wave of women's football at the moment, and now's the time to capitalise on it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, obviously this is something, we'll probably have to have some sort of official stance on at some point. But personally, I would like them to commit to a minimum term of providing at least a coach, but maybe more if there's more demand, to get people from Crawley to Brighton, because that's what we do at the moment to get people from Brighton to Crawley. That bus, as far as I know, is free for the WSL games. So I would like to see, when we do move to Brighton, them commit to, let's say, 3 to 5 years, something like that, of providing a free bus from Crawley to Brighton. And then I think you can go, okay, we are settled here in Brighton now. If you want to come from Crawley, because we have to pay petrol and stuff to drive to Crawley, even though we live, some of us live closer to Brighton than others. So I think at some point you have to cover that cost somehow, some way. But at the moment, the club is covering the cost because they acknowledge they're playing outside of Brighton. And I think it would be the right thing to do, to acknowledge that, having played in Crawley for so long, that now we're back in Brighton, there's people in Crawley who then are going to have difficulty attending the game. So, I think as a supporters group, that would be something we would be pressing quite hard on, is to get some sort of, commitment over a period of years to providing the bus free of charge, and then continuing to provide, a bus or coach, afterwards on a paid basis. So I'm going to zip through. We definitely could probably go on for about 4 hours with all this stuff. So I'll try and zip through a couple more. So this actually kind of goes to what we were talking about, which is that obviously, the stadium has to go through planning and design before building. However, news has been very, very thin on the ground. I put since last summer, but actually, to be honest, all we heard last summer was something's going to happen, and it's going to have at least 10,000 seats. That was essentially.
It's going to be blue as well. That was the
and Tony Bloom basically saying it had been sort of delayed, but not really giving any specifics about it. So I basically asked, how do people feel about that? How are people kind of feeling about the, just wanted to get the temperature in the room, as it were, of kind of how, and actually it was very split. The largest segment was that that I'm positive about the new stadium, but the lack of news is frustrating. So that's a key word. So that was 31.5%. Said the lack of news is frustrating. The second was the positive about the new stadium, but the lack of news is worrying. That was 25%, so only 6% less. People are actually concerned about, it's not just annoying, it's actually concerning at this point, effectively. And then we've even had some to basically say, in fact, the next, the third largest segment, only 15.7%, but still a significant amount of people saying that they're now questioning whether the new stadium is actually even going to happen. And I think given that those are the three largest, frustrated, worried, and wondering if it's ever going to happen, as opposed to, other options were like kind of it happens when it happens, or, I'm positive about it and I look forward to it being built. There were positive options. Not many people went for those. They went for frustrated, worried, and will it ever happen? So I think that kind of tells you where the fan base is.
I think really the word frustrating pretty much sums up Brighton Football Club, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be a little bit of a trial. So we did ask for a few comments on this as well. I'm going to again sort of rattle through these, but a couple of things that were brought up was to kind of reward fan loyalty. So like you said, Claire, whether that be like first pick of seats, just basically do something for people who have already been going for years, rather than people who just turn up because it suddenly plonked itself back in Brighton. So I think that's obviously something very important to people. A few people suggesting a bit more visibility and communication. So if you're having problems, you just tell us. Like, we're not going to be like, oh, well, that's all your fault, blah, 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 blah. Just keep us updated. Like, would be nice. And a few people, more logistical things like having a screen you can actually see and can move. Because one person, I think, said about, can the Crawley screen not, do the things that the Amex screen can? And I think the answer to that is definitely not.
No.
Because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? To me, I think that screen can only produce static single images. It cannot produce video. I've never seen it produce video.
I've never seen it from my side.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other point,
on our side.
That's the other point. I mean, maybe it can do video, but they just don't use it because it would be such a blurred, by the time you
pixelated,
got your binoculars out.
I'm trying to think. I don't think they've ever shown sort of highlights or anything on there.
No, exactly. So yeah, much better sort of screen. And again, for families and stuff, if your kid drops a bottle of Coke on the floor and you bend over, sod's law, that'll be when they bloody score. And then you think, well, I've missed it now, and there's no replays. I'm lucky. Occasionally, if our game is on YouTube, I'll put YouTube on my phone. If there's a decision I'm not all that happy with, I'll put YouTube on my phone, and then I'll scrub back to the time when whatever, 30 seconds a minute or whatever, and see what's happened. That's the only way you can do it. If you miss anything. So, so there we go. So
that's what we were all doing at Everton because we couldn't actually see the goal.
Yes,
so
exactly.
On their phone, trying to watch what the goal.
Watch it. Yeah. So now we come on to Crawley, and I think we'll probably again sort of zip through this a little bit because a lot of it is I think it's kind of what we would think it would be, if that makes sense. So, does the women's team being based in Crawley affect your ability to attend matches? 77.6% said no. So the majority of people who answered this are basically, it's fine to have it in Crawley. It doesn't affect my ability to actually attend. We did 20.4% did say yes. So again, that's probably non-season ticket holders, I would hazard a guess, that live closer to the Brighton area. You know, it might prevent them from becoming a season ticket holder until we move back. That is a comment that we do see occasionally on the fan sort of feedback and stuff. How at home do we feel at the Broadfield? The largest percentage was 39.2 for 3 out of 5. This is out of 5. So you're smack bang in the middle is the most popular, and I think that probably seems about right. There was a few votes for 2 and some votes for 4 and 5, and I think, to be honest with you, that goes along with you know, the kind of fortress Broadfield vibe, the fact that some of the players have said like they really like playing at the Broadfield and things like that. I think a lot of us almost do feel like an affection towards it, even though it is still a red stadium with a few blue flags on it. So I think it's you know, kind of 3 to 4 seems about right to me, because I'll be honest, to me it does feel like our home ground.
Yeah. I think wherever we play, you know, if we had to go and watch them play at the park, that would still be home. Do you know what I mean? Like that's our team. We turn up every week, we watch them, so it feels like home because they're there and we're there to support them as a group of people.
And again, you know, the fact that it's, you know, attendance have been down this year, largely because of the 12 o'clock kickoffs, but generally speaking, you know, we can get a good atmosphere in there. Whereas when we play at the Amex, it's fantastic. It's a beautiful stadium. It's blue, etc. But you've got 4,000 people in a 30,000 seat stadium, and that's, you know, while it's a privilege to be there, it's, you know, the atmosphere is just not the same, is it?
No.
Although we did win 4-1, so it was pretty good that day.
Yeah,
I mean that helps as well.
There were a couple of comments saying that they would like to see more games at the Amex. I think, to be honest with you, that's probably more a this season issue, because in the past we've had at least 2 games, if not 3, for the past sort of 3 or 4 seasons. This season, I think it's just a quirk of the calendar. We had a lot of away games in the months where they like to pencil the women's games into the Amex. And so what's consequently ended up happening is that we only were able to do that once before Christmas, and then after Christmas, both the men's and the women's team kind of start to have quarterfinals of things and 6 rounds and blah, blah, blah. And it's not necessarily that feasible to get any of the games in. And I think we worked out probably by sort of December, given the fact that we hadn't been told there were any new Amex games within 2025, that really it's Spurs or nothing for our second game. If there's some issue with playing Spurs there in the last game of the season, which there could be, because that fixture has to be played, that can't be moved for our convenience. That has to be played at the same time as every other game. If it's not that game, there are no free. The Amex is not free for any of our other games. So, and obviously we've got a few away games, of course. So, you know, that I think, as I say, the kind of the thing about more games at the Amex would, I think if you've had 3, you wouldn't necessarily been saying that, but this season we've had 1. So, you know, there we go, swings and roundabouts. This kind of goes along with the what we were talking about with the fans. So again, I won't sort of cover this one too much, but would you say the club has made improvements to the match day experience over the past year? And we've got 52% said yes, 32% said no, and 16% said not sure. I think it depends how you take it. If you look at it as purely 52% said yes and 48% said something different other than yes, that's probably not
52, 48. No.
That only means that one, you know, essentially out of 2 people, one of them doesn't think anything's got better in terms of match days this season.
But also, as well, is you've got a lot of people who are new to the sport and new to coming to the game. What is their idea of match experience?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
some people might consider that to just be the result.
Absolutely, it's what I was going to say. A lot of people, it will just be how good did the team play on the pitch, and was it noisy, and did you have a sing song, and was it great fun? Yes, it was great. Everything was brilliant. For other people, it will be, well, we went to London City and got given free hot chocolate, and we got flags, and we got this, and we got that, and blah 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 blah. So there's a big kind of, what is your expectation of your experience at a game? You know, does your experience include how bad the coffee is? Does it include, you know, how good your chips are, or whether there was enough chips in your cup of chips, or do you know what I mean? Whether the pizza van was there and cooked your pizza on time and you didn't miss the goal. There's loads and loads of things that, you know, it just all depends on what your experience expectations are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's lots of other questions on Crawley, but none that are desperately relevant for us to talk about. But I would say there's a little bit about the the transport, the parking, the shop, etc., etc., etc. For the most part, people are kind of saying it's what they expect from a ground like Crawley. So I don't think that's a knock or a praise in a way. It's just, do you expect sort of chips and a pie? Yes. And therefore that's okay. So yeah, no major qualms or anything there. Obviously, I did put out, again, another kind of long form response box for people to say how they would make Crawley more appealing. So some of these got mentioned in other parts as well. So if I double up on anything, then just ignore me. But yeah, we had put more effort into the fan zone. And some of these go alongside that, which is have an actual, like a proper shop. We had a few people say a real shop or a proper shop or a fully stocked shop. So that's obviously something that, the fan zone would, could accommodate in theory. More pre-match activities. So yeah, and then we had another one, add entertainment to the fan zone, more to buy, better catering facilities. So it just, I would say the majority of them were around just basically providing a bit more of some of the stuff that is already there. You've got one catering van. Well, it would make a big difference if there were 2 or 3, because then you'd have a choice. So then suddenly you feel like you're catered for. Whereas, and again, with the shop, if it's key rings on the counter and 3 or 4 different sizes of shirt, but not the size you want, then you're going to feel like that's not a good experience. Whereas maybe there's something they can do. Maybe there's a part of the fan zone where you go in on the left that's very rarely used. Whether they could set up some sort of pop-up tent or something there and be able to get more merchandise in.
Click and collect or something, can it? You can order.
Yeah, click and collect. That's a really
good shout, on the website before you go, and you just pick it up when you get to the game.
Because the postage cost is quite expensive, to be honest, and I think it's 75 quid or 100 quid for free postage. So yeah, that's a good shout. That's a really good shout. I'm gonna write that down.
Write that one down, mate.
I'm writing that one down.
Well, because I suppose, because they sell shirts in the fan zone, but they don't have printing there, do they?
No.
So you
get all that done.
You could order your Maisie Simon shirt and get it and collect it on the match day, couldn't you? That would be a good idea.
Yeah. There we go. See, we've come up with a gem already.
But I mean, the fan zone. I like I said, it's not something I particularly expect, but it's just sort of, it's not the nicest bit of Crawley, is it?
No.
I think the whole thing with Broadfield is just the horrible sort of filthy, rainy. Obviously, the weather's not helped this season, has it? But just the sort of horrible, filthy lane you got to get down to get to the sort of, you're almost going. You almost have to sort of climb over a fence to get into the
around the back of the allotment.
and then maybe Red is open, maybe it's not, and then the fan zone's just kind of over there in this sort of dingy corner and things like that. It's just, it's a sort of funny old thing. That's why I don't really tend. I suppose it'd be out of the rain, wouldn't it?
Yeah, to be fair, I could have probably put this in the Broadfield section. It's actually in the next section, which is to do with the match day experience. But out of the respondents who when asked, do you ever visit the fan zone at Broadfield, it was actually 90% said yes, 10% said no. But what I would say is I visit the fan zone, but I quite often go down to the fan zone, look in the fan zone, and then go, I'll go and do something else.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, it's the usual things. And shout out the man who does the photo booth, because someone made a comment saying he's really friendly, always happy to help or accommodate, or, you know, whatever you want to try and do in the photo booth. I'm not sure what people are doing in the photo booth, but you know, anything like that is very helpful. So, and I'm sure the face painting lady, you know, is lovely too, and very accommodating and stuff. I think it's just, if you don't want to go in the photo booth or get your face painted, then don't go to more than one match, because you're going to find it's the exact same thing next
the difference
week,
between the fan zone at Crawley and the terrace at the Amex is that the terrace, it's a fan zone, there's lots of tables, blah blah blah, there's probably a photo booth and some face painting, but there's also food and beer and coffee and whatever. So it's, you know, I don't know, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's a weird sort of site down there. It's also very damp. Yeah, it's a sort of, because there's very bit lakey around there, isn't it? That's why the pitch gets waterlogged, I think.
It could do with a few. It could do with a few more seats, couldn't it? Because, like you say, there's like a handful of seats outside the bar, which obviously are filled up with people that want to have a drink rather than just want to have a seat. And then you go around to the fan zone, and there's like a couple of picnic benches which are a bit dated and cold and wet, and
also they're next to the toilets. If I'm
right
not,
next to the toilet,
which I'm always a bit like, I don't know if I want to sit down and have a conversation or a drink with someone right next to a portaloo. Really.
I don't know why there's a portaloo there, but I suppose it's an overflow for the men's game. Do you know what I mean? Maybe.
Overflows.
Well, do you know what I mean? Because literally, but I suppose you've got to go in the ground otherwise, haven't you? That's the only toilets that's outside before you go in. So, but I think the fan zone is really, it should be aimed more at the younger people, which, like you say, face painting and stuff is great. But I just think like there's so much more you could do. Like London City didn't pay for all of the stuff that they gave away. They invited companies to come down and say, we've got 3,000-4,000 people there. Would you like to market to them and bring some stuff down and promotional stuff and hand it out? You can do the same with Brighton. There's plenty of companies around Brighton and Crawley, I'm sure, who would be happy to put a few £100 into some promotional stuff and come and hand it out, or who would happily pay, for everybody to have a portion of chips that day. It's a matter of just working it out and finding how to do it. But I think because it's not such the done thing in the men's game, is it? The men's game, you just turn up and watch football and that's it. Buy your pint, go home.
I think it just feels like, given the fact that 90% of people or people who responded said they go to the fan zone, but there's a lot of comments about how much the fan zone can be improved. I think it's almost like one of those things where it's like you're almost turning away money. We'll come on to this in a little bit with the programs, but if people are going there, but when they get there, they're like, well, there's not enough stuff to buy, there's not enough stuff to do, there's not enough stuff to keep me here, then it's kind of pointless almost having it whatsoever. You might as well just have some more food vans or something.
I think a lot of people go down there to meet friends. So the only time I go to the fans is you lot, and I go and have a look to see if you're down there. And then, like Claire said, the shop's not great because the things that I want to buy aren't there. So click and collect would be awesome. Brighton, do listen. But I can't eat any of the food because I'm gluten-free. But I'd love to get, like a really nice cup of coffee or a really nice, hot chocolate or something before we went in. So it'd be nice to have I think it was Enfield I went to with Eastbourne Borough, and they've got like the back half of a tuk-tuk in the ground that's got a proper espresso machine in it. And they were packed out all through the game. And they did not stop serving all the way through. It was really successful and really nice and a nice talking point, and I'm still talking about it now. But there's a lot more that could go in there but it's just, we've done this, we've done that. It all feels a little bit 50%. I don't want to say half-assed, but it's very much, well, we'll just do that, and it's almost like bare minimum. Yeah, we've got a fan zone, tick that box, thank you very much. Whereas other places, I mean, I don't remember seeing anything at Everton or some of the other places we've been to, or West Ham, but West Ham's has got Julie, so that makes up for it. But it's when you see it being done really properly, like at LCL, that's got very much of a. The thing about LCL is they're not coming with this is what we do in the men's game, because they don't have a men's team. They come with this is what we do in America, this is what we do overseas, and bringing the best of that to the English game. And that's the thing that I think we'd like to see. Is let's not worry about what we do at the men's game. What can we do at the women's game to make this fan zone really appealing? And at the moment, it's not quite hitting the mark. Certainly for me, because I don't have kids. I don't want to get my face painted, and if I want a photo with my friends, I use my camera.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Tim sums it up perfectly. In the comments, go to the fan zone more than once, only to see if anything's changed. Doesn't change.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a missed opportunity there. So hopefully something they'll.
They had a band playing Christmas carols.
They did. That wasn't too bad. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. They did at least utilize that extra bit of space that seems empty quite a lot of the time. So that was quite good. But yeah, hopefully more, just doing more would be appreciated. So, I think that's, we can keep our fingers crossed anyway. Okay, so we're coming on to match day now. So I will, again, we've kind of covered these a little bit as well. So I'll go through some of the results, but we've kind of spoken about the issues. So what would cause you to attend games less frequently or give up your season ticket? The highest was 54% said lack of investment. So I think that's what we've talked about, and I think that it is the team, but it's also the other parts like the fan zone and things like that. Is if people don't feel the money is being put in by the club, then people will start to go, do I want to put my money into it myself?
Yeah.
And I think that's why that was quite a clear winner, actually. The next one down was 35%, which was lack of fan interaction. And the only other one above 30% was poor performance. So again, I think there's a bit of there's a gap between poor performance and lack of investment. And that to me says, if the club is doing all the right things, but the team doesn't perform, there's some leeway there. If the club are not doing the right things, then it doesn't, the performance doesn't, really, unless you're going to win the league, it doesn't matter so much. You've got to feel like the club is as invested in it as you are. So I think that makes perfect sense. And then flipping it on its head, what would encourage you to go to more games? Or purchase a season ticket if you're not a season ticket holder already. The highest amount was 61%, was better quality of play or players. So essentially, we're a good team. If we're a good team, that would encourage more people to attend more games and buy season tickets. So that's probably a bit of a no-brainer, but it's good again to have that confirmation that is what people are looking for at this point. And also more fan interaction was a clear second with 43%. So people are always up for more, just more stuff out there for us to do, for us to get involved in, all stuff like that. So here we go. Here's the hot button topic. Again, probably don't really need to discuss it, but it is a hot button topic nonetheless. What would be your preferred kickoff time? So midday, 14%. Now, only really beating No Opinion, and later than 2 p.m. So 12 o'clock midday. Yeah, basically the only two that scored lower were non-specific times, i.e. I don't care or any time after 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
The number one was with 54% was 2 p.m., which is basically, you know, for the last few years before this year, when the majority of our games have kicked off. So more than half of people would prefer it to go back to 2 p.m. And then we did have a few votes for 1 p.m., so somewhere in between. This, I think, is again quite useful and goes to us speaking about the fan zone, which is how early do you arrive for games. And I have got some notes on this, if I can find them. Yes, here we go. So arrival time 1 to 2 hours before was 48% in 2025. That is up to 74% in 2026. So what I've written is that seems to me a clear appetite for more happening in that kind of 2 hours to an hour before.
Yeah.
Rather than just getting there and going, right, I'll go find my seat, sit down, game started. There are a lot. That's a big leap. That's nearly 30. Well, it's 25% odd, isn't it? Increase in people saying they're getting there earlier.
So it's also, I mean, I think Claire and I get there very early because
parking.
Claire wants to get us parking space.
Yeah.
You need to get parking, like, because you just can't guarantee it. Do you know what I mean? Especially when it's the bigger teams, you've got to be there early. Then we've kind of just got in the habit of doing it as well now, so it just makes sense to just get there. We like to see the players arrive. We like to, you know, and that's a get there 2 hours before the game starts type thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people like to do.
Yeah.
Including the away fans. You know, there's nothing going on in the away area they're all expected to just jumble in with us in the fan zone and in the Reds bar. Why not put a few burger vans down their end when you've got an Arsenal or a Chelsea turning up? Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense to not exploit that opportunity to make more money at the ground.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's a really good point, Ben, that some people are getting there. I mean, that's why I get there so early, is because of, you know, concerns around parking. But you are still there, whether you got there early because you're parking or whether you got there early because you want to go and have a drink before or whatever, you are still there early. So they've got you. One way or another, they've got you for an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game.
Yeah.
And it feels like there could be a lot more done to fill that time that, you know, granted, we'd love all, you know, give out loads of freebies and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
We're not even speaking about things like that, but we're talking about things that could be monetized by the club that people would pay for because they've got 2 hours to kill.
Yeah.
And they might have kids with them, or they might have friends with them who are not as interested in football. And they're thinking, what am I going to flaming do for 2 hours? Well, I don't want to get my face painted, and I've done the photo booth, and that took 5 minutes. So and it's like, well, then what do you do? Then, you know, where, you know, so, you know, again, we're okay because we've got a big group and a big community kind of around us. So we end up just nattering away to people. And, you know, I've spoken before about how quite often now we almost don't even get time to speak to everyone because, you know, there's so many people who we go and have a chat with or we know from other games and away travel and stuff like that. But it's like, for whatever reason, if people are getting there 2 hours before, you know, I don't want to say this too loudly, but start making some money off them. You know, so yeah, I mean, basically, you know, less than 1 hour before is now just 16%. And actually, there's a few people who get there 3 hours plus before, so they're the real hardcore. I'm not sure what they're doing, but
well, they just want to be, you know, they're the people that want to be there when the players arrive. They're the people that are, like you say, catching up with their mates and things, or maybe you know, organising the band or whatever like that. There was, or the fan zone and things like that. There are people that do want to do all of that. So like you say, why are you not, as a club, thinking we could invest in that?
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that's where the 12 o'clock kickoffs come in as well, because if you get there 3 hours before 12 o'clock kickoff, that's 9 a.m. That is a bit of a unusual time to be making a journey to get there for 9 a.m. for a football game.
Yeah.
But if that kickoff was 2 p.m., it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that you would go and sit in Reds from 11, have a bit of lunch in there,
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, blah 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 blah. But when it's 9 o'clock, I don't even think Reds would be open. Probably,
No,
I don't think they even open till 11. You know, so, you know, you can go and have a chat with your mates, of course you can. But again, that's another kind of, I wouldn't say it's unintended, because they must have known it was going to happen. But you know, they're talking about having drinking in the bowl, and we'll speak a little about that in a minute. But if you're getting there at like 9 a.m, they're not going to be serving you alcohol at 9 a.m. Like that's not what the route we want to go down. Like, you know, 11 a.m, you know, maybe is a little bit more acceptable, or after lunchtime, you know, after 12 for a 2 o'clock kickoff would be acceptable, you know. So that's obviously something they've got to negotiate, but I do think they are going to move away from these 12 o'clock kickoffs. So I'm hoping anyway. We've got some bits and bobs on away travel. Again, I'll kind of zip through this. What I would say, the positive things to note is how frequently people are going. So away fixtures attended, basically people responding to no, that they don't attend away games, has gone down from 38.9% to 21.6%. So that's good news. That means there's less people, you know, in our surveys saying that they just don't go to them whatsoever, which actually means that the whole of the, you know, 78.4% at least are going to one or two.
Yep.
And actually,
we've seen the growth of that ourselves, haven't we? So we know that that's,
yeah, exactly. And I think this is a good way of seeing whether the survey is valuable. Is when we have actually done something, or when the club has done something, is that reflected in the numbers?
Yeah.
And this is a good example of saying, well, yes, because, you know, not only has no's gone down, but all, or the majority of, and I think this is, you know, testament, you know, primarily to you, Claire, and Sam, and a few others who kind of kick-started it all, and then we all jumped on the bandwagon and tried to push it a little bit further. But all or majority of away games has gone from 1.9% of respondents to 27.5%. So that is a massive leap. I think only one person out of 50 plus respondents last season said they went to the all or the majority of games, and that might have been you, Claire.
I think that might have been me.
But now,
that might have been me.
Yeah, now a quarter of all people filling out this are saying that they're going to basically every game, or they might miss one.
Yeah.
You know, which is absolutely staggering. So I think that's incredible. So most people also said 55% said they would use club provided coach travel this season, and 66% said that they would use their own transportation or public transportation. So I still think, given those two numbers, you've still got a subsection of people who prefer to use their own transport.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the numbers would be the same. Because some people have said,
if they was to advertise that more often, they would probably have a bigger number of people wanting to go on it.
Yeah. Because there will be people out there in theory who would say, I don't want to use my own transportation. I would rather use club travel. So, you know, so it could skew the other way, but actually this one is kind of skewing in terms of, you know, there are obviously people responding who are saying that they are going to away games, but they're not using the club coach. So that's, you know, where the advertising and, you know, and talking about the benefits and stuff, and, you know, making it as cheap and affordable as possible, you know, will come in. This is kind of similar to last year. So again, I'm going to kind of go, because I don't want people to fall asleep listening to our podcast. I know some people do, but use it as a sleep aid. But the main considerations with away support is kind of similar to last year, which is kickoff times, distance from home, cost, and work, and to a slightly lesser degree, family commitments. So that is kind of, they're all the high scores there. If you're aware of club provided coach travel and would be interested in attending away fixtures, but have not done so, what has or would put you off? So obviously a lot of people answered not applicable because they do go to away games. But the number one from people who don't go to away games is the distance from home. So I guess just the length of time it is to travel to somewhere and how far it is away. We know people who can't go certain distances or would prefer not to because of they have responsibilities and stuff at home or a dependent or whatever. So, you know, that's understandable. And then second to that, just a little bit below, a few percentage points below is cost, which I think is always a factor. There will always be a tipping point with cost where it becomes so economical you think that's a no-brainer, I'd love to go, and equally on the other end it'll hit a tipping point where you think that's just too expensive, I can't justify it. So you know, that's always an ongoing thing. It's about SheGulls. Okay, so we're coming into home stretch, don't worry people. Are you aware of the Women's Super League fan choice pilot allowing alcohol consumptions at women's fixtures within designated areas of the stand? 66% said yes, 30% said no, and then we had a couple of not sure. So they weren't 100% sure whether they'd heard of it or not. I think that is the majority of people have heard about it, but obviously it hasn't been primarily communicated to our fan base because we haven't taken part in any of the trials. And also given the fact that a lot of people responding to this survey do travel to away games, that would be more than likely where they've probably heard about it or encountered it. So that makes sense. Now, when it comes to, this is one I'll throw out to you. So what would your opinion be about the pilot? So 45.1% said basically fans should have the choice whether to have alcohol or not. You know, it's not the men's game essentially. You know, we should be able to hold ourselves to a higher standard. It should just be an individual choice. So that was the biggest percentage. But again, that's 45% versus 55% who have at least got some concerns. So I think it's worth. So the next one down, the next level with 25.5% was I'm unsure, and perhaps the pilot scheme is the best way to essentially find out whether I would be in favor of it or not. You know, and I think that is taken on. But I think, to be honest with you, I even really feel in that space. To be honest with you, I don't want to just see it blanket implemented, because I think if we do have a pilot, we can prove to everyone that it can go successfully, and that people should be allowed the choice. But I wouldn't be a fan of just saying, right, from the kickoff next season, we're doing it. Tough luck.
Well, Crawley's not really geared up for it though, anyway.
It's not.
I can't see them piping lager into the sort of pie and chip places, and so otherwise, then you'd have to buy a pint in Reds and carry it around through the turnstiles into the stadium, which isn't going to happen, is it? So
no.
I mean, I suppose alcohol is available before the game and stuff, and just like at the Amex, in the men's game, you can get alcohol before the game, during the game, after the game. You're just not allowed to have it within sight of the pitch. I mean, I've been, quite often I'll get like a pint of water at the Amex, and you walk out and they're like, "Oh, what's in that glass? What's in that glass?" You have to show that it's water. Fine, sort of thing.
Could be a pint of vodka.
Could be a pint of vodka. But so it's. I think it's a weird thing in a way because it's not like should we be allowed alcohol within 50 miles of a football match. It's are we literally just changing the boundaries slightly? So it's a funny old one, really. But yeah, I mean, I was in the sort of, excuse me, pitch falling over. I was in the sort of ambivalent, but sort of, not concerned, but whatever. I think because I mean, I don't really drink very much anyway, and I sort of, so it doesn't really affect me. So I sort of,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of in that space where they, and the next section, I'm not skipping ahead because I think it's relevant. I'm going to come to Abby and Claire, see what they think. But there were, when I kind of put out there about, what would be people's concerns, I think people's concerns are valid. So you've got, it being spilt, not sure about alcohol being consumed around children. Don't want drunk fans. It's a family environment. Maybe there's a way that we could limit it. That's another situation where maybe they could do a token system or something. Other people have said, if it started to become like the sort of box park situation where whenever you score a goal, beer's getting thrown up in the air and all that sort of thing. So, again, I think all these are valid concerns. The only thing I would say from my perspective, having been on a couple of consultations and stuff now, is that I think the majority of clubs, a high percentage of clubs, have had zero issues. And actually, it was pointed out to me that on one occasion where one club did have an issue, it was when they played at the men's stadium rather than their secondary ground. I don't think that gives away too much information. But, I think there was a suggestion that it might have been men's fans taking advantage, or let's say men's adjacent fans. So maybe men's fans who'd gone, I'll give the women's game a go. It's at the big stadium. And then gone, we can drink in our seats, sort of thing. And there was a bit of one or two issues with that. So, it doesn't really seem to be of a lot of concern when it's been put into practice. People have actually been saying there's a lot of positives about it. Everyone doesn't have to leave like 10 minutes before to go and get an alcoholic drink, etc., etc. So I think there's a lot of positives to it, and as many people have pointed out, it's done in other sports. I think football is the only one, I think, with a law against drinking in the stadium. And actually, in the women's game, there is no law. They don't have to. It's not like we're kind of reversing a law. You're already allowed to do it. It's just that the regulations from the club say, and the WSL regulations say, we'll keep to the same rules as the men's game. So it's not like we would have to have rules rewritten or anything like that. It's perfectly okay and legal for women to drink.
That's just like the 3 p.m. blackout, 3 p.m. Saturday blackout.
Yeah, it doesn't apply. Yeah,
everyone just assumes it does, but it doesn't apply to the women's game. It doesn't. It only applies to like Premier League and Championship, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think there will be a trial of it. I think it probably will be at the Amex because I think it's easier to trial there than anywhere else. But I am broadly in favour of trialing it, and hopefully it will go well. How about you, Claire? What do you think about, do you think it's just a case of, why should we be tarnished with the same brush as men's fans, and ultimately we should be trusted to make our own decisions, and those that make bad decisions have to be told not to, just like you would in any other walk?
I think obviously it comes down to several things, doesn't it? You need to have good stewarding. Like really serious people who are perfectly capable and able to say, you had enough, out. And anyone that's causing trouble. But I think in general, I mean, I honestly, I don't really see that many people wanting to drink a pint in the women's game, to be fair. You might get a handful, but I don't think there'll be huge amounts of people. I think out of 2,000-3,000 people in the stands, I think you'll probably get maybe 100 of them might want to go for a pint and sit there and drink it. I don't think it'll be that big a deal. I'd like to be able to just sit and have a coffee. So why can't someone sit and have a pint if that's what they want? I think the issue becomes when there's always somebody that takes it too far, isn't there? There's always one person that will act like a complete twat. And as long as they're dealt with, as long as the stewards are prepared to come in and turf them out, I think we've got a long way to go before we become big enough, like the men's team fans will want to be turning up every game just so they can have a pint. I just can't see the point of it. Like they can just go down the pub, can't they? They don't need to come to a football game just to have a pint. If they're coming to watch the football, that's fine. And again, as long as they're behaving, who cares?
I think because you can get alcohol in the ground, you literally just can't drink it in your seat. I don't necessarily think. I don't know. I don't really see how it would change anything much.
I think the only reason you can't drink it in your seat is because the men's game fans have been unable to behave themselves and have used pint glasses to fling at each other, haven't they? And things like that. I just don't think you'll get that in the women's game. I don't. Yeah. I think if anybody starts kicking off, we've done it ourselves. We're always saying to people, "Oi, pack that in."
Yeah.
Or calm yourself down or whatever when people get too leery or whatever. So I just think that in the women's game, there's too many mums that are just going to go, oi, and they're going to start being mum, do you know what I mean? And going, just pack that in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
I don't think it will be a problem. And I think, all the while we have children sitting in amongst us, that we all have a responsibility to tell people to calm it down when they're going a bit too far, whether that's with swearing, whether that's with singing songs that are inappropriate, whether that's with flinging pint glasses at each other, whatever it is. If you're getting a bit leery, you're going to get told to pack it in.
Yeah. And just before I come to Abby, I keep remembering this and then forgetting it and then remembering it again. I think all the clubs that I talked to in regards to the pilot, they had at least one section that was a dedicated no alcohol section. So basically, if you had kids and you didn't want them to be around it, or another very good point which people made is that some people of certain religious faiths who don't feel comfortable being around people who drink because they don't drink, and that there should be a space for them to kind of feel safe within. So I think that's another key component which is worth bearing in mind. Is it's not just like, oh well, everyone can go and get lagered up now. It's like, well, no, you've got a choice to drink or not to drink, and also you will be in this, you will probably have the majority of the ground, but there will be a section where there is no alcohol allowed or no alcohol is served. So I think that's that's quite another key point, is that there probably, or it is unlikely that it would be drinking would just be blanket allowed in the whole stadium. There would be at least kind of one or two areas where you wouldn't be able to drink. I was gonna check in with Abby, but she's disappeared.
I am here.
Oh, she's here.
My video's got, but yes.
Okay, yes. Carry on, Abby. Sorry.
My tuppence halfpenny for what it's worth, before I do need to run away, is I'm very interested to see the results of the pilot and to see what people say. However, every bad experience I've ever had at a sporting event is because somebody's been too drunk. And I would very much not want that to come into the women's game. There is something to be said about the fact that if you can just sit and have a drink, you're not going to throw it down your neck at half time and then go back in. So you're sort of removing that binge drinking aspect. And the fact that people will go to a pub, have 5-6 pints before the game because they can't drink at the game. So there are pros and cons to it. I would very much like to have somewhere that is alcohol free, just like it would be. It's good to have at games where you have, a quiet zone for people that don't want to be surrounded by drums and singing and this, that, and the other. There's a huge variety of reasons why you wouldn't want to be around people who are drinking, particularly if you're recovering.
That was another point, which I didn't make, but that's true.
So there's lots of reasons. I think it needs a lot more discussion and a lot more looking into. But sadly, I am going to have to run away, so I will listen to the rest of
Yes, no problem. No problem.
As ever, delightful to talk to you.
Thank you, Abby.
Right.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. And just like that, we're down to 3. But we're basically at the end, so we're not far off anyway. So yeah, I think again the pilot, good idea. You can't blanket just do something. You need to find out what the issues are. If there are no issues, then you can go ahead and implement it. If there are issues, are they resolvable? If they are, then you resolve them. If they're not, then you don't carry on with it. So, and as far as my understanding of it goes, it is not a big revenue driver because particularly because of the amount of duty and stuff that there is, and tax and duty on alcohol. It's not kind of like, oh, well, they're just letting everyone drink because that's going to make them a load more money. That isn't really a factor from my understanding of it.
Also, I guess as well, they'd have to get sort of legal staff in as well, wouldn't they?
Yes, they'd have to have licensed.
A lot of the I don't know how old the kids are behind the sort of. I suppose they must all be 18, mustn't they? Because I think they sell booze anyway. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of implications and extra things and whatever's to take into account.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And kind of to that point, so I asked if you had feedback from other clubs that the pilot had gone well, with few, if any, reporting issues. How would that kind of affect your opinion? 55% said that would make them more likely to back a pilot at Brighton. And then 29.8% said it wouldn't really affect their opinion either way. And we had similar numbers for I would and wouldn't back the pilot either way. So I think that's interesting, though. It means kind of, again, one out of every two people is saying, well, if I had information, if I had some documentary evidence, let's say, video, physical, whatever, if the WSL puts something out statistic wise, etc., then that would affect what they thought of it. So I think that's something I'll probably feed back to the Football Supporters Association, because like I say, we have been kind of starved of any information because we haven't been part of the pilot. But if we are going to be part of the pilot, or this is going to be made a rule, then whoever it may be, the WSL, the FA, whatever, need to start telling us about it. They need to start explaining what's going on and what's allowed and what isn't allowed and all this sort of thing. Because I would hazard a guess that the majority of people, even though they've heard of the pilot, wouldn't necessarily know things like there would be a designated no alcohol part and things like that. So the more information, the better, I would say, basically. Now we are going to come on to basically we're still going. I think we're on the last two topics.
2 hours.
Yeah, last 2 hours. Yes, here we go. So yeah, last two topics, and then we've got a few sort of final comments just to add on. So the first one, again, probably don't need to discuss it too much. It's kind of self-explanatory, but about the range of merchandise available for women's team fans. So it was 49% poor, 42.9% good, and then we had a few for very poor, and I think one for excellent. Just literally one person said excellent. So I think perhaps maybe that could be how I've worded the question in some ways, because I actually think the range of merchandise that the club produces is quite good. But my point would be is it's not specific to the women's team. Yeah. And this is kind of borne out by the next question, which is what would you like to see more of? And by far and away the biggest, the winner, I would say, of this little poll, with 38 out of all the respondents, so 82.6% said more women's team specific merchandise. And then I think going hand in hand with that, the second top answer was the term BHA women or similar on merchandise. So essentially, start making things that either represent Brighton Hove Albion women. So let's say a Fran Kirby t-shirt or something, or at the very least be putting Brighton Hove Albion women on scarves, key rings, shirts. Yeah. Because what I think a lot of us feel is that we do support Brighton as a whole. Not all of us, because like Claire, you're not a fan of the men's team. A lot of us do, but a lot of us don't.
Yeah.
And therefore we want to basically say, I am a fan of Brighton Hove Albion women's team.
But it's also a way of putting the word out there about the women's team, isn't it? Because
exactly.
If I'm just walking around in a Brighton shirt, most people will just automatically assume men's football.
Exactly.
But, you know, if it's got women on it, or, you know, something that I can wear that says Brighton Women, then people go, oh, interesting. Didn't know we had a women's team.
Yeah, yeah. And they at least know that you're a fan of the women's team, which, you know, okay, sometimes you do wear things to be fashionable, but a lot of the time with sort of football stuff, it's to almost like say, this is, you know, I'm representing this club or whatever. But effectively at the moment, you have to represent the whole club. And I think in some cases that is acceptable to people and it's okay. And it kind of is what it is at the moment. We don't have a lot of choice. But also we would sometimes like to very specifically say that we support the women's.
Yeah. And also, you know, things like I want to buy things, you know, if I was going to buy a mug, I'd rather have, I don't know, Fran or Maisie or somebody else's face on it than one of the boys who I don't know, or just a plain Brighton mug. I'd rather have something that, you know, really does say I'm supporting the women's team. And Liverpool had that down brilliantly when we went up there. Everything in their shop was literally for the women's team.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's as simple as that. You know, it's just make some stuff for people to say that they represent the fandom of the women's team and not just a broad fandom of everything. You know, and I think if you can make those changes, that's a start, and then you can start to then get into things that are more specifically for the women's team. So, you know, like a Frank Kirby shirt or you know, something like that. You know, I really love those kind of, like, I tried to design one the other day, but like the sort of 80s 90s sort of hip hop you know, gaudy logo with all the different little pictures of, like, you know, the artist or whoever, you know, things like that are like really, you know, you go into Brighton, you see kids like buying these things from all these like trendy shops or whatever, and they haven't got a clue who like Salt and Pepper are, or you know, like they don't know, or you see a kid wearing like a Nirvana t-shirt and they're like 12 and you think, I don't think you probably know what that sort of represents. But you know, all these things, again, if you then see someone out with you think, oh, that's a cool t-shirt, and then you're like, oh, that's like Maisie Simons is on that. That's awesome. Like, I'm going to get me one of them, or I'm going to get the kid one. I'll get my daughter one of them for Christmas, you know. But at the moment, it's kind of like, well, it's BHAFC monogram or not a lot. So, you know, I think they could, a lot more could be done there. And again, I think a little bit goes a long way. I think if you started to produce that merchandise, there would be a lot of people who would go, well, now you've started to do it, I'll put my weight behind that and I'll get out and spend some money on it, and, you know, so on and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, there's lots of votes for a few votes for everything else. So more themes and varieties, fashionable, more creativity and things like that. So, you know, all stuff that's positive and basically saying, I want to buy your stuff, but I just want it to represent the women sometimes, not just the whole club. So, so there we go. Then we have got last topic, which is about the programs. 57.1% said they would definitely like them to return. Only 8.2% said, oh no, beg your pardon, I think it's 9.4% said no or definitely not.
Yeah.
And then there was a bit of a section in between, which was like either no, but I'm not that bothered about it, or yes, but I'm not that bothered about it. So still the overwhelming thing is to support the return of physical programs. And I think that's kind of with the next one, which is kind of like, why would you want to see them return? The top answers were good souvenir, which I think is the thing we've talked about before, about this kind of digitalization of everything, where like you go to a game, come away, and you've got nothing to prove that you went.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously, you know, everyone's got a card and stuff as their season ticket holder and stuff, and even the tickets are almost always sent by email now, so they're just on an email.
You get a ticket. I mean, I suppose you could print them off, but it's not the same.
It's not the same, is it? No, you wouldn't take that into show and tell, you know, at school or whatever. And then the next one with a very similar amount of votes was they enhance the match day experience, which is just kind of, it's just something that a lot of clubs do, and you see a lot of people reading them, and it's just a part of going to a game is that you can get a program. So that was quite, broadly quite positive. About the cost, most people, I mean, I shouldn't really have asked about the cost, because everyone's going to want to say they want them cheaper. But 42.6%, £2 to £2.99, £3 to £3.49 had 23%, and £3.50 to £3.99 12.8%. So around the £3 mark seems fair. I think I've got a program from every game except for the Everton one, where they do a digital one too, and they kind of seem to be between £3 and £4 depending on how good quality they are. So again, that seems about right. 52.1% said they would buy a program at every single game they went to. 14.6% said they would buy them at most games, and another 14.6% said occasionally, and then all the other tiers, which were like infrequently, never buy, blah blah blah, were all very low amounts. So again, 1 in 2 people that responded to the survey said that they would buy a program every game. And this is something I'll throw out to you very, very briefly, and it's something we've discussed before, which is by far and away the favorite response for how to reduce the thing around cost and wastage. By far and away the highest one people selected was an option to buy with your season ticket.
So
you pay for every program up front in advance with your season ticket. And we've spoken before about how that could lead to more attendance in the fan zone, more people visiting the shop, etc. If you put the programs in the shop, make you collect them from there, you're forcing people into the fan zone where you can make them spend more money. So people might not quite realize what they were signing up to with that one. But what do you guys think about that? If they said that you could have a program, all you've got to do is pay when you get your season ticket, A, would you do it? And B, do you think that's a good option? I'll start with you on this, Ben, on this one.
I probably would, but I wouldn't want that to be the only thing, because I think, if you're a kid going to a football match, again, because there's no ticket stubs or anything anymore, having a program, especially if you can get it autographed, that kind of stuff, that could be quite a big deal. But a lot of kids are season ticket holders, but a lot of kids just get taken to the odd game here and there, and so I'd like them to be able to get one as well. So I suppose with the if say there's 1,000 people with season tickets, 500 of them want the program in advance. You buy the program with the season ticket, so you print 500 for them. I'd kind of want a few hundred extras to be produced, so that casual one-off fans and kids that don't go over a week can also get one, because that would be. I suppose it would be especially a shame if kids go to it and they go, "Oh, can we get a program, please, mummy?" And mummy walks up and they say, "Sorry, Mayor, they're only for season ticket holders. Sorry, can't." That would be.
I did have on here.
Not doing them at all, I think.
I did have on here programs are limited to a certain or small print run, because we kind of spoke a bit before about with the away games, the FOMO element. And I do think people would, if you saw lots of people with programs, you'd go, "Where'd you get that program from?" And if it was mainly season ticket holders, but like you say, maybe they had a little bit of an extra on top. But people, they say, "Oh, did you get a program?" "Well, I paid for it with my season ticket." They'd be like, "Oh, damn."
Yeah, and they'd be doing that next season. I have to admit, I don't tend to read the ones online. I don't know how many people do.
I don't really think anyone does, to be honest with you.
But with the programs that they have done for the women at the Amex, and obviously the programs that the men do for the men, the artwork on them is really good. They did sort of like cartoon, Marvel comic-y sort of things. The players are sort of kind of like
that was last season's one.
Last season, and this year they've gone really retro. It's been really different styles of retro program and stuff. They've been really nice. So again, that makes it's not just a picture of Brighton over Albion with a picture of one of the players in the front or whatever. It's a really nice piece of artwork, or really nice sort of thing. So again, it's if you produce a nice thing, then people will want to buy it.
Yeah, that souvenir factor, that having something to show and something to trigger memories and stuff. I've always been a sucker for buying a program, and my wife will often say, we're not paying £15 for a program or something, but I think that's the thing that I will keep, and then I will occasionally come across it, and then it will trigger, because you see photos, you see logos, you see an actor that was in something, or a photo of a band doing a certain song or whatever, and it triggers things from my perspective. So I always find, like, I'd rather spend 15 quid on a program than 25 quid on a t-shirt, which I either will wear and ruin or will never wear, in which case what's the point? So I suppose that's my perspective on it. Claire, how about you? Would you go along with that kind of thing of, like, maybe you get a commitment from certain supporters, maybe they even get a program, maybe you get sort of 10 for the price of 11 or whatever. No, 11 for the price of 10.
I'm in the camp of not bothered, because I don't collect stuff anymore. I don't want stuff.
Yeah,
me, that's my personal thing. But like Ben said, when they did those lovely ones with the really good artwork, I could have been persuaded just because of the artwork, because they look really cool. But I think people, it's that thing, isn't it, of like, why do you not want to do something that everybody's asking you for? Your fans are making it clear they would like you to do something that they are prepared to pay for, whether that is up front or on the day. They're still prepared to pay for it. Why wouldn't you want to do it? You're already creating it. You've created it because it's online. So you've done the work. All you've got to do is send that to a printer, and they send it back to you. And then you sell them, and people buy them. I think, why wouldn't you? And I think it's like with everything. If you give people options, they can make decisions. So you can put the option of, do you want these guaranteed? You get 11 for 10 or whatever. You pick them up on the day, blah, 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 blah. Or you just, you say later on, would you like to buy them separately from your season ticket or whatever it is? But, if you don't sell it, no one's going to buy it. And this seems to be the problem with Brighton, is it's almost like they don't want to make any money. It's almost like they just they don't see there being any viable option to make any money, so therefore we won't even try.
Yeah, and I think this is where, like, I think we always try and be constructive. It would be very easy to say, oh, it's ridiculous that we don't have a printed program. Whereas what I would say is, what people like us are trying to do and others are trying to do, is they're saying, we hear you why you don't produce a program, but we still think there is a need for it. We still think there is a want for it. We still think it would improve the match day experience. It would still be, a valuable sort of tool to engage with your fans and stuff. We hear you that you have wastage, and we hear you that about the cost. But my main thing about the cost is, to me, the main cost is staffing to produce the program. They already make a digital one. So exactly like you said, Claire, all they've got to do is get it printed. That is actually very easy.
You've done the work. It's not.
Exactly. And as I've said before, I did I produced a fanzine for a different sport where I would order about 30 or 40 copies, and it basically cost me about £1 a copy. So I used to sell them for £3 because I had to post them, I had to buy the envelope, I had to buy the stuff to put it in with and everything like that. So it was kind of a break even. Maybe I'd make 10p if I was lucky. But don't get me wrong, I'm just a one person ordering 40. If Brighton and Hove Albion go to I just used like an online print house. If they went to them individually and said, this is what we want, this is how many people have paid for it, we'll commit to using you for the whole season, because these
must be already doing that with the men's game. Surely, do they not have game programs?
Exactly, they should have discounts and stuff.
All you're doing is tacking on an extra 500 and saying, and can you just do them for us as well, please?
Exactly. So this thing that they cost sort of £2 or £3 to make is not right. That is incorrect. If it's costing them that to make, they need to do some shopping around for another supplier. So there comes in the point. Well, okay, maybe it only costs like £1 to print it, or actually it should be a lot less. Maybe it only costs 80p to print it, but we have to staff it. We have to have the people to write it. But you're doing that anyway. So why not just then get it printed? And I just think like this is where we will always try and be positive. We will always try and, you know, we want to call out when things are not right. But I always think from like the world of business, you'll always get told, don't tell me like all the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
You can tell me the things that are wrong, but also tell me how we're going to fix them.
Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing where we are saying, look, there's literally 5 or 6 options you could go down here to reduce wastage, to help the environment, all that sort of thing. You know, if you pay a bit extra per program, you can use 100% recycled paper or a certain percentage of recycled paper. You know, if you want to say it's an environmental thing. If it's a cost thing, well, I'd rather that you had some on sale for £4 than didn't have them at all, you know, and so on and so forth. So there's like, it's not like we're kind of saying, well, look, this is horrendous, we don't have a program, you know, the club are rubbish, blah, blah, blah. But we're saying, look, we've heard your issue, and here are our responses that we think would alleviate that issue. What's your response? Why can't we do this? And at the moment, that's where it's not, you don't get it back, you know. And I think that's an area where like just sit down, have a chat with us, have a chat with people who are interested in programs, fan groups, etc., etc., etc. What could we do? You know, we've even spoken about things that we could, you know, add on value to some of these things. You know, interviews and stuff. If we have more access, we could do interviews, so someone else could not have to do the interview, and that would free up their time to do something else that they're supposed to be doing, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I do think there's some leeway there, and I do think it's a shame that we're one of the very, very few clubs, including WSL2 clubs and National League clubs, who don't produce a program, or rather that we do, but just no one reads it because it's online via a QR code that no one can find. So yes, there we go. We've got a few additional comments. I mean, they're mostly along the same lines, but just a few sort of extra things to say on here. There's a fair few people saying thank you very much for all our good work. They obviously don't listen to the podcast regularly. So we appreciate that, and you know, we appreciate, you know, the feedback. There was a section for feedback on SheGulls, so we will obviously take that to heart and take that all on board. Again, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people saying again or separately that we need a striker. And then there were a few more individualized ones which I thought were worth mentioning. Someone said tiered pricing for the seats, so that they would be willing to pay more for like a better view in a certain stand. I thought that was interesting, because we've spoken before about how we feel that the standing tickets in our home end should be cheaper to encourage that to be full.
It's unreal that they're trying to charge the same price for standing as it is for sitting. You know, it's just a bit weird. Yeah, but I think I get it, because I think the issue comes is if the ticket, let's say it was a £5 to stand, you could buy a ticket for a £5 to stand and then just wait and see where all the empty seats are and then just go and sit down. And that's why I think they do it.
Yeah, I think that would probably be an issue in the cup games. But if I remember rightly, in the WSL games, they won't let you move from one section to another, will they?
Yeah, during the game you can walk around.
You can still get from the south stand into the east stand.
Yeah.
Right. So they'd have to do something there.
Yeah, because they have to have it open so you can go to the toilet and things and go and get a drink or whatever.
Yeah. So they'd have to do something.
The only time they close off anything is at about 5 minutes towards the end of the game. Your gate gets shut to stop us coming round.
That's probably what I'm thinking of then, yeah.
But other than that, it's open all the way around pretty much.
Range,
you can walk anywhere.
So they'd have to do something with that. But assuming that's an obstacle that they could potentially overcome, then that would make sense, wouldn't it? To have.
I mean, once you've got your own stadium, you can have individual entrances, couldn't you? So that you can't walk from one end to the other. You have to come. If you've got a standing ticket, you have to go into the standing zone and stand there.
Yeah, and I mean they probably do it on quite a low like a low technology way at West Ham, because
Yeah.
when we went in the first time, we were on one side of a barrier, and we had the away stone plinths at the back of it, whereas now we get funneled in the other side. We can't access that area. I mean, you could if you really tried, but why would you? You just get kicked back out again. So now we go in a slightly different entrance, which funnels us off into the actual standing bit where all the actual seating bit where all the West Ham fans sit. So yeah, it can be done. It would be harder to do at Crawley, obviously, because you'd have to retrofit maybe some stuff, or have like extra stewards to kind of monitor it. But certainly at the new ground, tiered prices is going to be really important, because I do anticipate there being quite a large leap in season ticket costs. But I think I said before, I think it would also be very good if they committed to either no increase or a low increase from Crawley to the new stadium, but that your seat will be in a less desirable area. But that would still mean that it would be affordable to go. You know, instead of saying, well, it's 100 quid at Crawley and now it's 175 at Brighton, go, it's 175 if you want to move to the one in Brighton and sit on the centre line. It's actually still 100 quid if you sit behind the goal.
So it would be tiered.
Yeah. And also, I mean, that comes into, there was another question about whether people would pay for like upgrades and stuff. And I think, again, that's something that they could really monetize, is giving you, you know, we said before, a bottle of Coke for like 5 quid is a rip-off. We know it doesn't cost them 5 quid. We know it probably costs them like 30p or 40p. So you put it somewhere in the middle, you make money, the fans see it as decent value, you sell a lot of them, fandabby-dozy. You know? So, you know, it just makes sense, doesn't it? Someone said cleverer ideas in terms of encouragement for fans to go to away games. That's one of our pet topics. Yeah, absolutely. And not doing some of the advertising like literally the day before or on the day of the game. That's really, don't know what that happens, but yeah. And another person said about the open training, but not 500 yards away, garrisoned up in the clouds at the Amex. So yes, another person saying basically the one we had before at the training ground was much better, and you know, especially for the
brilliant
team. Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah. And the other thing I thought, and this is something we haven't spoken about before, but you know, maybe it'll be a future topic, is the fact that the women's team isn't sponsored. It doesn't have a match ball sponsor. It doesn't have I guess it has a player of the match sponsor because British Airways sponsor it. But it's like a blanket thing. But there are lots of things in the men's game that people pay a lot of money to stick their name on that they don't do for the women's game. You know, and I think one occasion someone we know inquired about sponsoring like the match ball, and they were basically told it'd be like well over £1,000, and it's sort of like, well, people aren't going to pay that necessarily in the women's game.
Just mental.
But then wouldn't still like 250 quid, wouldn't that help? Like wouldn't that help cover your costs of maybe a couple of lost programs? Or, you know, like, I think, you know, baby steps in some situations would be a good start. You start with, you know, you can sponsor the match ball for 200 quid or whatever, 250 quid. And if you get 500 inquiries, raise it up, you know. But if you get 10 who just think, well, I'll give it a go, see how it goes, then you still got 250 quid when you didn't have it before, you know. So I think that's a very good, very, very good point. And, you know, I think there were a lot of people, it's actually something I'm considering for our end of season trophies, in order to get better trophies and more, you know, higher quality and stuff, is potentially allowing people to sponsor them. Yeah. Because ultimately, you know, if someone's going to put their hand in their pocket for 20 quid, the least they can do is have their name on it alongside SheGulls. You know, and then the players will get a trophy that's worthy of pride of place. You know, it doesn't look like they just won the under 12 juniors. You know, yeah, last year's ones were great, but it would be fantastic to have something meaningful and that would be treasured. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, sponsorship is an interesting one and can be explored at a later date. Right. Well, I think we've probably gone on for nearly like 3 hours, or probably
we have gone on for 3 hours.
It was very much a State of the Union type thing, wasn't it? So I'm glad we've kind of got it and done it, and it's out the way. So and that was even with me, quote unquote, rushing a few. So could have gone a lot longer, but yeah, I think we covered the majority of it. I do believe there's a way I can make the results public without kind of allowing people to tinker about with them. So assuming that all goes okay, I'll get that posted on the social medias and stuff as well, so everyone can kind of look in more detail about what people voted for. But all your data and stuff and responses are completely anonymous. We don't collect any data or anything like that, so I don't know who put what or anything like that. So have no fear if you said something particularly scathing about the club or about SheGulls. We do not know who you are or when you did it, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, have no concerns about that. Yeah, so that's going to round off this week's show. Remember, you can find us as always at SheGulls on X or Twitter, and of course on Instagram, run by friend of the podcast Steve Gibbs. You can head over to shegulls.com. That's where we have all the links to our other areas of interest. We did have one comment about when are we going to update the songbook. So hopefully soon. I can't tell you when, but soon. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. We'll certainly make a big song and dance, pun intended, about it when we do get it finally up to date. So yeah, look out for that soon. We are also on Facebook over at SheGulls Podcast. So just type in SheGulls Podcast, should come up. And of course, while you're over on Facebook, do follow Brighton Women Fans for more general Albion chat. I'll also shout out our 2 Patreon members. It's still 2. Come on, people. Where are you? Let's be having you. It's still 2, but they're very loyal. I love them to bits. Ben and Jess over on the Patreon. So thank you very much. That money that you guys paid did come in very, very handy recently. We're not lying. I also shout out Tim, who made a very generous donation. We're not lying when we say that your money helps to run SheGulls. It literally does. So thank you very much for all your donations and and sending your kind pennies. I also just wanted to say, on the topic of International Women's Day, we did make a small donation to Brighton Women's Centre. So this is it's the first year, I think, in my awareness, that the club have done something for International Women's Day, although I think they may have before we got involved. But this is actually the 3rd year in a row where SheGulls has made a donation to either a local charity or a charity that sort of represents one of our players. So that's something we're quite proud of, and it's something we want to keep going. So the more recognition we can put towards International Women's Day, the better. So all that remains for me to say is a massive thank you to you, Ben.
Oh, thank you.
And an enormous thank you to you, Claire.
You're welcome.
And I shall leave you all by saying this has been the SheGulls podcast, powered by Albion Obsessed.